My name is Lacey, and I thought my husband was taking me to a romantic getaway for our anniversary. Instead, he drove me to his secret new house, where he and his parents planned for us to live. Surprise! Evan exclaimed, gesturing proudly at the sprawling two-story home before us. What do you think? I blinked, struggling to process the scene.
I.
I don't understand. What is this place? It's our new home, sweetheart, he beamed, wrapping an arm around my waist. I've been working on it for months. Before I could respond, the front door burst open. Evan's parents, Meredith and Douglas, emerged with matching grins. Welcome home, darling, Meredith trilled, enveloping me in a suffocating hug. Isn't it just perfect? I extracted myself from her embrace, forcing a smile. It's unexpected. Evan, can we talk for a moment? He waved dismissively. Later, honey. Let's take the grand tour first. As we stepped inside, my heart sank. The decor was a carbon copy of Meredith and Douglas's home, all antiques and floral prints. Nothing reflected my taste or style. And here's the best part, Douglas announced, leading us to a wing off the main living area. Your mother and I will be staying in this guest suite. We'll be one big, happy family. I felt the blood drain from my face. You're moving in with us. Meredith laughed, a shrill sound that set my teeth on edge. Of course, dear. We wouldn't miss this for the world. I turned to Evan, searching his face for any sign that this was all an elaborate joke. But he just smiled, oblivious to my growing horror. Isn't it great, Lace? We'll never have to worry about them being alone as they get older. I forced myself to take a deep breath. Evan, can I speak with you privately?
Now.
He frowned but followed me to a quiet corner. What's wrong? I thought you'd be thrilled. Thrilled, I hissed. You built an entire house without telling me, and now your parents are moving in? When exactly were you planning to discuss this with me? He had the audacity to look confused. I wanted it to be a surprise. You're always talking about how we need more space. For us, Evan. Not for your parents to invade our lives. Hey, he said sharply. That's my family you're talking about. They've done so much for us. I opened my mouth to argue further, but Meredith's voice cut through the tension. Lacey, dear, come help me in the kitchen. I want to show you where everything is. As I followed her, my mind raced. This wasn't just a house, it was a trap. And I had a sinking feeling I just walked right into it. I woke to the smell of bacon wafting through the house. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then reality crashed down, and I groaned into my pillow. Lacey, dear, breakfast is ready. Meredith's shrill voice pierced through the door. I dragged myself out of bed, steeling myself for another day of invasion. In the kitchen, Meredith bustled around, rearranging my carefully organized cupboards. There you are. I've made your favorite blueberry pancakes. Actually, I'm allergic to blueberries. I reminded her for the third time this week. She waved dismissively. Oh, nonsense. A little fruit won't hurt you. I bit my tongue and reached for the coffee pot, only to find it empty. Evan and Douglas already left for work, Meredith chirped. I thought we could spend the day redecorating your office. It's so plain. My heart raced. My office is fine, Meredith. I have a big project due dash. Lacey, she interrupted, her tone sharp. When are you going to give up this silly freelancing nonsense? A proper wife should be focused on her home, not playing with computers all day. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A client, wondering why I'd missed our morning call. I excused myself and retreated to my office, locking the door behind me. Hours later, a knock startled me from my work. Evan poked his head in, frowning. Mom says you've been in here all day. She's upset you didn't help with dinner. I took a deep breath. Evan, we need to talk about boundaries. Your parents are dash. They're family, Lacey. He cut me off. And they're doing us a huge favor by being here. The least you could do is show some gratitude. Gratitude? I sputtered. For what? Criticizing everything I do? Rearranging our entire lives without my input? Evan's face hardened. I thought you'd be happy to have help around the house. Maybe if you weren't so selfish dash. Selfish. I stood up, anger boiling over. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't want to move. I didn't want your parents living with us, and I certainly didn't want my entire life turned upside down. Keep your voice down, Evan hissed. You're being hysterical. I stared at him, suddenly seeing a stranger where my husband used to be. I can't do this anymore, Evan. Something has to change. He shook his head, disappointment etched across his face. The only thing that needs to change is your attitude. Family comes first, Lacey. It's time you learned that. As he walked away, leaving me alone in my office sanctuary, I realized with a sinking heart that this invasion was far from over. And if I wanted to survive it, I'd have to find a way to fight back. I was searching for a misplaced flash drive when I stumbled upon a folder hidden in Evan's desk drawer. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. My blood ran cold as I scanned the documents inside. Mortgage papers, loan agreements, all with my name on them, but I'd never signed a thing. What are you doing? Evan's voice made me jump. I spun around, clutching the papers. Care to explain why there's a mortgage in my name that I never agreed to? His face paled. Lacey, I can explain dash. Please do, I snapped. Because from where I'm standing, this looks like fraud. Evan ran a hand through his hair. It's not what you think. The bank wouldn't approve the loan without both our names. I was going to tell you, but dash. But what? I interrupted. You decided to commit identity theft instead? Don't be so dramatic, he scoffed. It's our house. What's mine is yours, remember? I laughed bitterly. Is it? Because last I checked, I had no say in any of this. The house, your parents moving in, you made all those decisions without me. I did it for us. Evan shouted. For our future. Our future. I waved the papers in his face. You mean the future, where I'm on the hook for a mortgage I never agreed to? His eyes hardened. You're being ungrateful. Do you know how hard I worked to make this happen? Ungrateful. I felt like I was suffocating. Evan, this is illegal. If anything happens, my credit is ruined. My future is ruined. He grabbed the papers from my hand. Nothing's going to happen. You're overreacting as usual. As usual? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. When did you become this person? The Evan I married would never dash. Never what? He sneered. Never put his family first? Never try to build a better life for us. I shook my head, fighting back tears. This isn't better, Evan. This is a nightmare. The only nightmare here is your attitude, he spat. Maybe if you stopped being so selfish and started appreciating what you have dash. What I have, I interrupted. What I have is a husband who lies to me, in-laws who criticize my every move, and a life I never asked for. Evan's face twisted with anger. If you're so unhappy, maybe you should leave. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with finality. I stared at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face, and realized with a sinking heart that maybe I should. But as I turned to walk away, a chilling thought stopped me in my tracks. If I left now, I'd be leaving with nothing, and thanks to Evan's deception, potentially owing everything. I needed a plan, and fast. The tension in the dining room was thick enough to cut with a knife. I pushed my food around my plate, appetite long gone, as Meredith's voice grated on my last nerve. You know, Lacey dear, I was just telling Evan how wonderful it would be to have a grandchild running around the house, she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I gripped my fork tighter. We've discussed this, Meredith. Evan and I aren't ready for children yet. Douglas chimed in. Not ready? You're not getting any younger, you know. Tick-tock. I felt Evan stiffen beside me, but he remained silent. My cheeks burned with humiliation and anger. Meredith leaned forward, her voice sickly sweet. I just worry, dear. A woman your age should have started a family by now. And Evan would make such a wonderful father. Mom. Evan finally spoke up, but his tone was weak, placating. Let's change the subject. I'm only saying what we're all thinking, Meredith continued, undeterred. Maybe if you focus less on your little computer drawings and more on being a proper wife dash. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. Excuse me, I muttered, fleeing the room. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. That's when I heard their voices, low and conspiratorial, drifting from the dining room. Son, you need to think about your future, Douglas was saying. You're young, successful. You deserve someone who can give you a family. Dad, please, Evan sighed. Lacey and I are fine. Meredith's voice cut in, sharp and insistent. Are you really, Evan? Because from where we're sitting, she's holding you back. There are plenty of lovely girls at the country club who would jump at the chance to start a family with you. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited for Evan to defend me, to shut down this ridiculous conversation. But his response made my blood run cold. I don't know, Mom. Maybe you're right. I'll think about it. I stumbled back, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. Was this really happening? Was Evan actually considering leaving me because I wouldn't, give him children on his parents' timetable? As I retreated to my office, locking the door behind me, a cold determination settled over me. I'd been trying to make this work, to be the perfect wife and daughter-in-law. But it was clear now that nothing I did would ever be enough for them. It was time to stop playing nice. If Evan and his parents wanted a war, they were about to get one. And I'd be damned if I went down without a fight. The next morning, I steeled myself and marched into the kitchen, determined to confront Evan about the conversation I'd overheard. But Meredith intercepted me, her smile sharp as a knife. Lacey, dear, we need to talk, she said, steering me towards the living room. Evan and Douglas were already there, their faces grim. My stomach churned. What's going on? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Meredith produced a folder from behind her back. We've come to a decision, Lacey. This situation isn't working for anyone. She slid a document across the coffee table. My eyes widened as I read the title. Petition for divorce. What is this? I sputtered, looking from Meredith to Evan. It's quite simple, Meredith continued, her voice cold. Either you start behaving like a proper wife, give up this silly career, focus on starting a family, or you sign these papers and leave. Without a cent, I turned to Evan, disbelief etched across my face. You're okay with this? He wouldn't meet my eyes. It's for the best, Lace. We want different things. Different things? I echoed, anger rising. Or, do you mean your parents want different things for you? Douglas cleared his throat. Now, Lacey, let's be reasonable. You've had your fun playing career woman, but it's time to grow up. Evan needs a real partner. A real partner? I shot back. You mean a doormat who'll do whatever you say? Meredith's eyes flashed. Watch your tone, young lady. We're offering you a choice here. Be grateful. I laughed bitterly. Grateful? For being threatened and manipulated? For having my husband and his parents try to bully me into giving up everything I am? Everything you are is holding Evan back, Meredith snapped. Now, are you going to be reasonable? Or do we need to make this ugly? I stood, shaking with fury. You want ugly? I'll show you ugly. I know about the mortgage fraud, Evan. How do you think that'll look to your precious country club friends? Evan paled. Lacey, don't dash. Don't what? I interrupted. Don't stand up for myself? Don't fight back against this insanity. I turned to leave, but Meredith's voice stopped me cold. If you walk out that door, you'll have nothing. We'll make sure of it. I looked back at them, Meredith's smug smile, Douglas's stern frown, and Evan's conflicted face. In that moment, I realized I already had nothing. My marriage, my home, my sense of security, it was all a lie. You can't take what I never really had, I said quietly and walked out. As I closed the door behind me, I heard Evan call my name, but it was too late. The line had been drawn, and I knew which side I was on. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows as I paced the living room. Hurricane warnings blared from the TV, urging immediate evacuation. I grabbed my phone, dialing Evan's number for the 10th time. Straight to voicemail. Evan, where are you? We need to leave now. I shouted into the void. Just then, headlights swept across the driveway. I rushed to the window, relief flooding through me. But it vanished as quickly as it came when I saw Evan helping his parents into the car, luggage in tow. I burst out the front door, rain pelting my face. Evan, what's going on? He turned, startled. Lacey, get back inside. It's dangerous out here. Where are you going? I demanded, struggling to be heard over the wind. Meredith leaned out the car window. We're evacuating, dear. Surely you've made your own arrangements. My blood ran cold. What? Evan, you were supposed to come get me. He had the decency to look ashamed. I thought you'd already left. Mom said dash. She said what? I spat, fury rising. That I'd abandoned you? That I didn't need your help. Douglas honked the horn. Son, we need to go. The roads will be closing soon. Evan looked torn, glancing between me and his parents. Lacey, I'm sorry. We can't wait. There's no room in the car with all our things. All your things. I echoed, disbelieving. What about me, Evan? Your wife. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Look, just call an Uber or something. We'll meet up at the shelter. Before I could respond, Meredith called out, Evan now. With one last conflicted look, he jumped into the car. I watched, stunned, as they drove away, leaving me alone in the howling wind and rain. Reality crashed down as another gust nearly knocked me off my feet. I was alone, abandoned, with a hurricane bearing down on us. Stumbling back inside, I grabbed my emergency bag and laptop, hands shaking as I tried to book a ride. But it was too late. All services were suspended. Panic clawed at my throat as I realized the gravity of my situation. How could Evan do this? How could he leave me behind? As the storm raged outside, a strange calm settled over me. This was it. The final betrayal. Any lingering doubt about Evan's true nature evaporated like mist in the hurricane winds. I'd given him everything. My trust, my love, my future. And in return, he'd left me to face this tempest alone. Well, if I was going to weather this storm, I'd do it on my own terms. No more waiting for rescue. No more hoping Evan would suddenly remember he had a wife. It was time to save myself. The storm had passed, but the fury inside me raged on. I sat in a small motel room, my laptop open before me, fingers flying across the keyboard. After barely escaping the hurricane, I'd found temporary shelter and immediately set to work. Evan's betrayal had ignited a fire within me. No more playing the victim. It was time to fight back. I dove into Evan and Douglas's digital records, my graphic design skills proving unexpectedly useful in navigating complex financial documents. Hours blurred together as I pieced together a disturbing puzzle of fraud and deceit. Got you, I muttered, uncovering a trail of falsified loan applications and forged signatures. The mortgage on our house was just the tip of the iceberg. Douglas had been using Evan's position at the bank to orchestrate a complex web of financial fraud. And Evan, whether willingly or under his father's influence, was neck-deep in it. My phone buzzed. Evan's name flashed on the screen. I ignored it, focusing on downloading and securing evidence. He'd made his choice when he left me behind. Now I was making mine. As dawn broke, I sat back, exhausted but triumphant. I had everything I needed to bring their house of cards tumbling down. A knock at the door startled me. Lacey, are you in there? Evan's voice. I froze, heart pounding. Please, I've been looking everywhere for you. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I approached the door silently, peering through the peephole. Evan stood there, looking disheveled and distraught. Go away, Evan, I called out, my voice steady. Lacey, please. Let me explain. I never meant to leave you behind. Mom said dash. I don't care what your mother said. I interrupted. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. What does that mean? His voice took on an edge of panic. I smiled grimly. It means I'm done, Evan. Done being manipulated, lied to, and treated like I don't matter. I know about the fraud. All of it. Silence fell on the other side of the door. Then, Lacey, whatever you think you know, you're wrong. Don't do anything rash. His tone had shifted from pleading to threatening. It only strengthened my resolve. Goodbye, Evan, I said firmly. Tell your parents I said hello. Oh, and you might want to lawyer up. As his protests faded down the hallway, I turned back to my laptop. With a deep breath, I began composing emails to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit and the State Bar Association. The storm had passed, but for Evan and his family, the real tempest was just beginning. And this time, I'd be the one controlling the winds of change. I stood in the courthouse hallway, my heart pounding as I waited for the judge's decision. Months of preparation had led to this moment. Across from me, Evan and his parents huddled with their lawyers, their faces drawn and pale. The courtroom doors opened, and my attorney emerged, a smile playing at her lips. "Lacey, it's time." As we filed back in, I caught Evan's eye. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I'd once loved. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a mask of cold indifference. The judge cleared his throat. After reviewing the evidence presented, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Lacey Matthews. A collective gasp rippled through the room. I sat, stunned, as the judge continued. Mr. Evans and Mr. Douglas Evans are hereby ordered to pay restitution for the fraudulent financial activities uncovered. Furthermore, all assets obtained through these illegal means will be seized. Meredith let out a wail, while Douglas slumped in his seat. Evan just stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched. Additionally, the judge added, the divorce is granted, with a settlement heavily favoring Mrs. Matthews due to the circumstances of fraud and emotional distress. As we left the courtroom, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. I'd won. Outside, reporters swarmed, shouting questions about the high-profile case. I spotted Evan and his parents being ushered into a waiting car, their reputations in tatters. My lawyer turned to me, beaming. "Congratulations, Lacey. You did it." I nodded, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. "Thank you for everything." As the crowd dispersed, I found myself alone on the courthouse steps. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the city. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. My phone buzzed with a message from a design firm I'd been courting. They were offering me a position as lead designer in New York City. I smiled, realizing the world was wide open now. No more suffocating house, no more overbearing in-laws, no more living someone else's life. As I walked down the steps, I caught my reflection in a window. The woman staring back at me was stronger, wiser, and finally free. The ordeal had been painful, but it had forged me into someone I could be proud of. Someone who wouldn't let anyone, not a husband, not in-laws, not anyone, dictate her worth or her future. I hailed a taxi, ready to start the next chapter of my life. As the city lights blurred past, I felt a sense of excitement I hadn't experienced in years. The storm had passed, and I had not only survived, I had thrived. Whatever came next, I knew I could handle it, because now, finally, I was in control of my own story.
Hey, I'm bringing about 10 colleagues back for an after party, so get things ready, okay? He said casually. Just because you're in your final month of pregnancy doesn't mean you can't handle that much, right? And make sure there are some desserts the ladies will enjoy. Exhausted from caring for our energetic 2-year-old twins and navigating the challenges of my final month of pregnancy, my body felt stretched to its limits. My husband, who often left childcare responsibilities to me, grew frustrated when I hesitated due to the short notice. Despite my fatigue, I reluctantly began preparations, eventually lying down in the nursery to settle the twins for the night. Hours later, one of the intoxicated colleagues stumbled into the nursery, shocked to discover our family scene. "I had no idea you had young children and a pregnant wife. Did you forget to mention it?" he slurred, raising his voice towards my husband. With a single comment from my husband, what had started as a light-hearted after-party swiftly descended into chaos. I had married my husband at the age of 28 after a whirlwind romance, rushing into marriage within months. Initially, I juggled my job while he harbored dreams of me becoming a full-time homemaker. Despite not actively planning for children, we enjoyed our newlywed bliss for the first year. My pregnancy arrived just before my 30th birthday, prompting me to resign from my job as agreed, embracing my role as a homemaker. Excitement filled my husband as he shared news of our growing family with everyone he met. When the news of twins and the risks of a first pregnancy arose, doctors recommended a managed hospital stay. My husband, fearing complications, readily agreed, though concerns lingered about the state of our home as his domestic skills were limited. Fortunately, my in-laws stepped in with a solution. We debated between regular visits for my mother-in-law or my husband staying with them until my discharge. He chose the latter option. After safely delivering the twins via C-section, my discharge from the hospital was a joyful affair, celebrated with my husband, in-laws, and parents by my side. Nurses commented on our apparent happiness as we returned home. However, once we settled back into our house, my husband's demeanor shifted. "Feels good to be back in our own space, away from half of my mom's nagging," he joked, catching me off guard. Expecting our parents to stay longer, they surprised us by suggesting we have some private family time. My in-laws returned home, and my parents went back to their hotel. Juggling the twins and luggage, my husband complained of a sore shoulder and left me to manage. He briefly held one of the babies but soon placed them on the sofa, asking for tea. "Let's set up the baby's sleeping area first," I suggested through discomfort, arranging a spot for them. This marked the beginning of my husband's disinterest in parenting. The following day, my parents arrived early, prioritizing the twins above all else, a lesson from experience. I focused on caring for the twins and my husband, often neglecting my own needs. Around noon, my in-laws returned, having witnessed my mother's efforts and grasped the demands of twin care. From then on, we tackled parenting together, with both sets of grandparents pitching in. While my father-in-law and father maintained their work commitments, my mother-in-law and mother provided support during the weekdays. Living out of state, my parents' visits were limited, so we heavily relied on my in-laws, who adored the twins and never judged my parenting skills. Their reassurances and encouragement to take things at my own pace were invaluable. Men may initially struggle with childcare, but once they take the first step, they find it fulfilling. My father-in-law shared from his own experience, acknowledging the initial hesitance and fear of failure. Reflecting on his own early parenting days, my father recounted his nervousness when he first took care of me. Despite these anecdotes, my husband remained disengaged, responding with mere nods or brief comments. As time passed and my parents' visits became less frequent, my husband's attitude deteriorated, testing my in-laws' patience. He often complained about being hungry and demanded freshly cooked meals while I juggled breastfeeding and household chores, criticizing any reliance on convenience foods. "It's not like I rely on ready meals all the time," he defended himself, yet he seemed dissatisfied even if a single dish was pre-made, viewing it as a lapse in my homemaking duties. "You're not a child. If you're hungry, make something yourself. Babies can't feed themselves," I countered. Instead of demanding a cooked meal, why not suggest taking turns with breastfeeding and formula? Initially shocked by my in-laws scolding him, my husband retorted, "If I cook, what's left for a full-time homemaker to do? And if I breastfeed, what's left for a mother to do?" His response left us all astounded. Following this, my mother-in-law delivered a series of lectures on household responsibilities, while my father-in-law gave my husband basic childcare lessons. Reluctantly, he assisted, his demeanor sullen throughout. Over the next 2 years, until my third pregnancy, he used work as an excuse to avoid childcare. However, in the presence of my parents, excuses didn't suffice and he reluctantly participated, albeit grudgingly. During my second pregnancy, severe morning sickness plagued me again. Witnessing my discomfort, even my husband, who had become more engaged thanks to my in-laws' initial guidance, pitched in with more household chores and childcare. Gradually, though, he found excuses to avoid them. His dedication waned notably when he cooked a meal that didn't turn out well. "Mistakes happen," I reassured him, trying to eat despite feeling unwell. However, he interpreted my inability to finish the meal as criticism of his cooking, feeling his efforts were futile. Once he started cutting corners, his commitment swiftly dwindled, lasting less than a month. Now, weekends are dedicated to his hobbies, and he often returns home late on weekdays due to work or social engagements. There were days we barely saw each other, I recalled. I asked him to come home earlier or spend at least one weekend day with us. I didn't need him to take care of me. I just wanted him to spend time with the twins. "You've been parenting for 2 years now, so you must be used to it, right? And it's your second pregnancy, just one baby this time." "There's nothing left for me to do," my husband claimed. With that, my husband left to indulge in his hobbies. Lately, the 2-year-old twins seemed more attuned to our moods. They picked up on my husband's distant tone and my expressions of disappointment. Unconsciously, I found myself sighing in frustration. Why did I choose to have a third child in this situation? I questioned myself relentlessly. Occasionally, my husband showed kindness toward me despite his lack of involvement in childcare. When he sought physical intimacy, it reassured me that he still cared, yet I'd often complied to avoid upsetting him and creating more issues. Reflecting on our situation, I realized it was a vicious cycle that brought us to where we were. It wasn't that I didn't want the baby growing inside me, I was genuinely happy about the pregnancy. But deep down, I felt it wasn't the right time. Feeling the baby move inside my swelling belly was both comforting and poignant. I would gently stroke my belly, apologizing for any perceived weakness and promising to grow stronger, urging the baby to arrive healthy. Like before, this birth would also be via C-section. As the due date approached, I needed to be hospitalized, and preparations were necessary. Most importantly, I relied on my husband's help to care for the twins during my hospital stay. While I couldn't ask him to take time off work, I hoped he could assist in the evenings. His response, however, shattered my hopes. Taking time off for my wife's childbirth is embarrassing. It makes me look like a pushover, he remarked, leaving me speechless. Before I could retort, he interrupted with a demand for dinner. Let's not dwell on that. The twins are 2 now. They can feed themselves when hungry, he insisted. Really? Then a grown man in his 30s should be more than capable of making his own meal. Why not set an example for the kids? I countered. I'm fine. My earnings keep this family going. You should be grateful and make me dinner as appreciation, he retorted, frustrating me further. As my pregnancy progressed, the strain on my back slowed my movements. He criticized my housework, calling it sluggish and lacking enthusiasm. Lately, his favorite refrain was, I'm the breadwinner of this family. It was he who insisted I become a homemaker once I became pregnant, despite my desire to continue working. I reluctantly agreed to my husband's insistence on me becoming a homemaker, though accepting his role as the sole provider was difficult. As my pregnancy reached the 36th week, my movements slowed and his criticisms grew harsher. His lack of consideration infuriated me, but fearing for my health, I held back from arguing and absorbed his unkind words. Approaching the 38th week and scheduled for a C-section, my husband questioned my decision. Why not reconsider the C-section? Twins were unavoidable last time, but with just one baby now, wouldn't a natural birth be more fulfilling? His misunderstanding left me exasperated. Choosing a C-section was about minimizing risks to both me and the baby, not avoiding housework as he implied. I patiently explained the medical risks, suggesting he consult with the doctor if my explanations weren't clear enough. Dismissing my concerns, he retorted, why should I take time from my schedule to learn about C-sections? I'm not the one giving birth. On the day of my hospital admission, I tried to reason with him to avoid further conflict, but he snapped, accusing me of being persistent. Amidst this tension, my husband unexpectedly called. He said he's bringing 10 colleagues home for an after-party and asked me to prepare food, especially desserts that women would enjoy. Before having children, he used to host such gatherings, and I had enjoyed the socializing despite it being primarily his colleagues. These gatherings had become less frequent since my pregnancy and even more so after the twins were born. It never happened after the twins were born, I recalled. It seemed his colleagues were considerate about our young twins needing constant attention. I couldn't fathom why suddenly they would decide to come over in such a large group now. I'm about to be hospitalized and labor could start any time. It's impossible for me to prepare a meal for guests at such short notice. I reasoned with my husband, feeling overwhelmed by the situation. I even suggested we host the after-party elsewhere, even if it costs a bit more. My husband, known for his generosity and occasionally lavish gestures with colleagues, was insistent. You agreed we'd host it here. Are you trying to embarrass me? He snapped back angrily. He emphasized that a wife should support her husband's image and obey his decisions without question. Exhausted and lacking the energy to argue further, I reluctantly agreed to do as he said. With the time so late, shopping is out of the question. I'll have to make do with what we have and prepare a meal for 10. I resignedly told him, grateful I had stocked up on extra ingredients earlier. Yet this meant I would need to shop again tomorrow. As I cooked, my belly tightened with tension and worry crept in. Will I even be able to finish cooking? I wondered to myself. Following my husband's instructions, I retreated to a room with the twins once the preparations were done. While putting the twins to bed, the noise of my husband and his colleagues returning startled them awake. Silently urging them to be quiet, I managed to soothe them back to sleep. Relieved as I watched the twins peacefully asleep, a sharp pain gripped my belly. Struggling to suppress a cry, I covered my mouth with both hands, trying not to disturb anyone. The pain intensified, signaling a potentially serious situation. Suddenly, the door opened unexpectedly. "Sorry, I thought this was the bathroom," slurred a colleague, clearly drunk. Inside the room were the sleeping twins and me, a pregnant woman barely holding back a groan of pain. I reassured him, "Please enjoy yourself. Don't worry about us," relying on our previous interactions to ease his concern. Stuttering an apology, he quickly left the room, leaving me alone with the twins, grappling with the pain and uncertainty. I heard my husband's voice from the living room, agitated and confrontational. "Why did you leave your young kids and pregnant wife alone? Isn't she due soon?" Confused by the sudden change in tone, I had assumed his colleagues were aware of our situation when they arrived. Their behavior had seemed considerate until now. Perhaps it was a joke amplified by alcohol, I thought, but my husband took it seriously, unable to back down once committed. However, from their conversation, it became clear that wasn't the case. His colleagues explained they had declined previous invitations because of our young children and my pregnancy. Feeling guilty for attending so late and unannounced, they hadn't realized we were at home. "Why did this happen?" one of them asked. Another mentioned hearing we were at my parents' place with my husband home alone. "So, we didn't think it would be a problem," he added. Aware that 10 colleagues had unexpectedly arrived for an after-party, I had hidden away to avoid being seen. "If you were seen, there's nothing we can do about it," one remarked dismissively. "She always finds excuses like taking care of the twins or being pregnant to avoid household chores." My husband defended himself confidently, insisting I cook for 10 people late at night. Curious and concerned, I stepped out of the room. I worried about my husband's escalating anger, how he might act, especially at home where he sometimes behaved like a tyrant. Though I couldn't be certain if he was the type to act differently in public, I feared his next move. Peeking into the living room, I saw a colleague gripping my husband's shirt, trying to calm him down. Even the others, in varying degrees of inebriation, attempted to defuse the situation, arguing he was going too far. The colleague explained his frustration, causing those who had defended my husband to reconsider. Several colleagues, who themselves had children the twins' age, expressed disbelief and scorn toward my husband's behavior. Female colleagues condemned him, calling him the worst kind of husband, while voices suggested ending the gathering. Some began tidying up. As he was labeled the worst in both husbandry and fatherhood, my husband's arrogance faltered, leaving him unable to respond. Several colleagues noticed me and apologized for the disruption. Moving to a nearby sofa to alleviate the growing pain in my stomach, I realized the intervals were consistent. It was definitely labor. I called out to my husband, who stood silently under a barrage of scolding from his colleagues. But he didn't respond. One of them noticed my distress and asked if I needed to call the hospital. When I nodded, they handed me the cordless phone. With shaky hands, I dialed the hospital and was instructed to come in immediately. Thankfully, my hospital bag was ready in the bedroom. Struggling to get up, a kind female colleague offered to fetch it for me if I allowed her into the room, to which I gratefully agreed. Amid the late-night labor pains, my husband seemed utterly defeated. I debated whether to call my in-laws to take care of the twins. How many times had I wished we lived closer to my parents, who I could call without hesitation in such moments. "If you're going to the hospital, go alone, and if you call for an ambulance, tell them not to use the siren, okay? We don't need the neighbors knowing," my husband muttered bitterly. "You brought this upon yourself, so deal with it." His bitterness stemmed from his exposed lies causing this turmoil. I followed his earlier instructions, quietly sequestered in the room. Lies, especially poorly constructed ones, are bound to unravel, particularly those spun by men. I wanted to lash out in anger at his blame shifting, but the stress on my body forbade it. As I struggled to contain my emotions, a loud slap echoed through the room. I turned to see one of my husband's colleagues, someone I also knew, slapping him across the face in frustration. "I never thought you could be so heartless. Giving birth is a matter of life and death. And you hit me," I exclaimed, stunned by the situation unfolding before me. I've never been hit, not even by my own parents. The words felt surreal, as if I were hearing them in a movie rather than real life. My husband, visibly embarrassed and his face flushed red with wounded pride, seemed deeply humiliated. "Sorry for expecting empathy from someone who's never experienced pain like this," he retorted defensively. "The pain your wife is going through is beyond your comprehension. Why am I the one being blamed here? I'm the one supporting this family," he argued vehemently, shifting blame onto me for embarrassing him in public while shouting at the colleague who had slapped him, threatening legal action for assault. But his outburst fell on deaf ears. His colleagues dismissed his threats and turned their attention to me, asking how they could help. Amidst the commotion, the twins woke up, frightened by the unfamiliar faces and raised voices, and began crying. Overwhelmed by the situation, caring for myself, and now having to calm the twins, I felt a wave of frustration at my useless husband, who seemed more concerned with his pride than our immediate needs. Just as I contemplated calling my in-laws for help, a female colleague and another colleague with children stepped forward to care for the twins. Gratefully, I accepted their offer. The woman assured me she often cared for her nieces and nephews, while the man mentioned his own children were around the same age as the twins. I briefed them on the toys in the twins' room, any dietary considerations, and told them they were welcome to use whatever food was available in the house. I'd also planned to call my mother-in-law earlier than planned, letting her know about the situation. Some colleagues who had experience with childbirth suggested we take a taxi to the hospital for a quicker arrival. They tried to arrange one, but it would take some time. Then one colleague mentioned a subordinate who lived nearby and wasn't at the gathering. A father himself, he rushed over immediately after being called. His understanding wife had encouraged him to leave quickly, a gesture that touched me deeply, even if it might have been a fabricated excuse. Despite my husband's continued protests of his righteousness, both the colleague and I ignored him. The subordinate colleague drove me to the hospital, while the female colleague who had accompanied me assured she would stay until my in-laws or parents arrived. I thanked her profusely as she took charge, contacting my parents and in-laws on my behalf. Despite her own work commitments the next day, she insisted it was no trouble to stay until my in-laws arrived. The following morning, my parents, who lived out of state, arrived. They had missed the cesarean delivery but were relieved to find both me and the newborn safe. However, the true turmoil began once everything settled down. Upon learning that a female colleague had called them, both my parents and my in-laws suspected infidelity. They were eager to hear the details but rushed to the hospital first. After arriving and hearing the full story, they were shocked to discover that the situation was more serious than they had imagined. At the hospital, my in-laws assumed my husband was at home caring for the twins, feeling somewhat reassured that he was at least fulfilling his duties as a father. Little did they know, it was actually my colleagues who were looking after the twins while I had been forced to cook for 10 people while on the brink of giving birth. Apologies flowed from my in-laws to both my parents and me for my husband's misconduct. Recognizing the need for my parents' support, my in-laws swiftly departed to confront my husband. The scene they encountered at our home was disheartening. By the time they arrived, all but 2 of my husband's colleagues had left. The remaining 2 were busy caring for the twins and cleaning up after the party while my husband sulked in a corner, nursing a beer. My mother-in-law handed over some taxi fare and a small token of appreciation to the colleagues who stayed behind, expressing her gratitude and apologies. She understood that money couldn't fully rectify the situation, but it was the only immediate way she could convey her feelings. Later, my in-laws personally thanked each of the 10 colleagues who had been there. Alone with my husband, his parents, and the twins, my mother-in-law took the children for a walk, sparing them from witnessing their father being reprimanded. When they returned, my husband's cheek bore evidence of a solid blow from his father. Under his father's stern lecture, my husband looked utterly defeated, yet he stubbornly insisted that he had done nothing wrong. Throughout my recovery at home with our 3rd child, my husband showed no signs of change. In his parents' presence, he appeared compliant, but as soon as they left, he reverted to his old ways. Juggling our 2-year-old twins and the newborn, I had little respite, yet he continued to bark orders at me. He blamed me for being an inadequate wife, suggesting that his father's rebuke was somehow my fault. It became increasingly clear that he was becoming more than I could handle. I made the decision to divorce my husband and informed both my in-laws and my parents about it. My parents fully supported my choice, having already suggested I return to their house before I was discharged from the hospital. Disappointed in their son's behavior, my in-laws expressed no opposition and apologized for the trouble he had caused. My husband, however, strongly resisted the idea of divorce and did not agree right away. He sought advice from his colleagues at work, only to find that they were surprised I hadn't initiated the divorce sooner and actually supported my decision. In essence, my husband found himself abandoned by his colleagues. Rumors began swirling at his workplace about an incident that occurred during a home party he hosted. The exact details were unclear, but the day after the party, several colleagues, including my husband, were absent or arrived late to work. My in-laws even visited the company to apologize to those affected. Whatever my husband had done had clearly left an impression. Seeing both of his parents apologizing together left many wondering about the severity of his actions. Speculation spread throughout the office. Meanwhile, news of my safe delivery circulated among the 10 colleagues who attended the party. Some curious employees speculated that perhaps my delivery had triggered my husband's actions. While not entirely accurate, the rumor gained traction, and my husband found himself not only looked down upon by his colleagues but also by his subordinates. As his work performance suffered, he eventually decided to leave the job voluntarily. It was only then that he seemed to grasp the gravity of his situation. Initially agreeing to the divorce out of anger, he later regretted his decisions. After quitting his job and moving back in with his parents, he pleaded with me tearfully to reconsider, claiming our home was his sanctuary. However, by then, I had already moved on from that chapter of my life. I returned to my parents' home and focused on raising our children with their support. I had no time or inclination to dwell on a man I had decided to leave behind. In the meantime, my husband struggled to find new employment before eventually being kicked out of his parents' house with no savings and mounting financial obligations due to child support and alimony payments. Desperate, he turned to borrowing money from risky sources just to get by, plunging him into a cycle of debt and hardship. Now, he holds a difficult job with questionable lenders, barely earning enough to cover his daily expenses, which are quickly consumed by debt repayments. While I have moved forward with my life at my parents' home, I maintain contact with my ex-husband's former colleagues and his parents. The twins expressed a desire to reconnect with the older siblings who used to play with them, prompting me to reach out. At that time, I couldn't help but wonder what kind of colleagues would attend a party under such circumstances. Yet, to my surprise, apart from my husband, they proved to be remarkably empathetic and supportive individuals. I credit much of my present happiness to those 10 people. Some of them have since become close friends, and we now regularly connect on a family-to-family basis, sharing our experiences and challenges of parenthood. My in-laws showed me great kindness, and the twins grew quite attached to them. With my parents also maintaining a warm relationship with my in-laws, they visit frequently to spend time with the twins and our new baby. Through this entire ordeal, I've learned the true essence of mutual support in life. The gratitude I felt then remains with me, and I am determined to continue building a future filled with even greater happiness alongside my precious family. My request was flatly denied. I screamed inside. It would be fine if it was just the storage shed. Don't make a fool of me. Our house is spacious enough, and if the rooms were tidied up, there would be no problem having my father live with us. Clearly, my husband values my family less than a pet. Well then, I will sincerely clean up the storage shed and renovate it. Even the storage shed can be used just like a regular room if it's clean. There's meaning in living with my father now, Aaron said. There's no way I'm doing such a thing. Why should I renovate for your father? I recalled the major renovation we did to make sure my mother-in-law, who visits sometimes, would have no trouble staying over, even installing a bathroom and toilet just like a hotel. I won't rely on such a heartless man anymore, I decided. My name is Vivian Westhill, 52 years old. I help with the company my husband runs. My son Matthew has left home, and it's just the two of us living together. My mother-in-law sometimes comes over, but since her house is nearby, she doesn't live with us. How I met my husband goes back almost 30 years. I hate to say it myself, but I was known for being good-looking in my hometown. My mother passed away in a traffic accident when I was in middle school, and I lived with my father, supporting each other. Although I was invited out by many men, they were nothing but a hindrance to me. I had a dream of becoming an accountant, and I was working hard towards that. Despite this, I did have a boyfriend of the same age, and we would secretly call each other and go out to eat after part-time work. Though I was popular, I had no intention of dating anyone else and never did. The only people I could let my guard down with were him and my father. He appreciated not my appearance but my seriousness and true strength, among other aspects of my personality and way of thinking. I think we would have become a couple even if I didn't look the way I did. That was the kind of relationship we had. However, one day everything changed. When I returned home, I was greeted by the sight of an unfamiliar family of three in my living room. My father had a troubled expression on his face, but I was even more surprised. The strangers introduced themselves as the West Hills, a name that immediately rang a bell. They were a famous wealthy family in town. I couldn't fathom why they were in my house. "Welcome home, Vivian. Mr. Westhill here wants to take you as his wife," my father announced. I was so shocked that everything went white before my eyes. A wife? Marriage? What was he talking about? I had never seen these people before. Everyone knew the West Hills held significant influence in town, yet the idea of me becoming a bride to one of them was beyond belief. "Nice to meet you, Vivian. Our errand has fallen for you at first sight. He insists on having you as his wife," my would-be father-in-law began. Though it felt surreal, they didn't disappear no matter how many times I blinked. Even being told such a thing, I had never met Aaron before, so why should I marry their son? "Well, you see, your father owes a large amount of debt. We thought maybe we could help you out," he said, looking at my father and me alternately with a look of disdain. This was the first I had heard of my father's debt. "Well, take your time and talk it over with your father. We'll come back in a week to hear your answer." Could our fate really be decided in just a week? It didn't seem real. I thought things like this only happened in dramas, and I couldn't believe it was happening to me. Stunned, I watched as the three of them left after bowing their heads. "Dad, what's this about a debt? What's your relation with those people?" I demanded, my voice shaking with disbelief. My father turned to me, his face drained of color. "Vivian, I'm sorry. It's true. I was lonely after your mother passed away suddenly. I started drinking and gambling. Before I knew it, the money was gone, and I began borrowing to cover it." Everything he said since I came home was too much to process. "Debt? Why didn't you tell me? I understand you were lonely, but gambling?" My thoughts were chaotic, and I couldn't hide my distress. This revelation blindsided me. I had never seen my father drunk or angry from gambling losses. I didn't even know Mr. Westhill had invited me and led me into such situations. We'd gone out together, and I hadn't paid attention to how much the tab was accumulating. The same with gambling. We bought lottery tickets together, and the losses piled up. My father was too trusting, not suspecting anyone of foul play. It must have been easy for someone like a scam artist to manipulate him. They were probably plotting from the beginning to ensnare my father and force me into their scheme. "Wait a second. What happens to you if I refuse to marry their son?" I asked desperately, hoping for another solution. "I'll likely be hounded by debt collectors. I might even end up in a debtor's prison," he admitted quietly. I trembled uncontrollably at his words. "But debtors' prisons don't exist anymore. Can't you work and pay it off?" I clung to a flicker of hope, hoping for a way out of this nightmare. "I'm sorry, Vivian, that's impossible. Debt collectors might start contacting my workplace. I might not be able to work anymore," my father said, his voice heavy with resignation. I felt completely trapped. There was nothing more to discuss. I wanted to unleash my frustration, humiliation, and anger, but I couldn't bring myself to burden my father, who had always cared for me. Packing my bags, I made the decision to head straight to the West Hill family. There was no point in agonizing over it any longer. It was a difficult choice, but with the debt mounting, I couldn't cling to my home. Marrying Aaron was the only way out, and without hesitation, I quietly left the house. Arriving at the West Hills mansion late that night, I hesitated before boldly knocking on the front door. "You're early. Seems like you're after money." Just like everyone else, Aaron greeted me coldly. I wanted to scream in frustration. I didn't want their money, and I wasn't unhappy because of my lack of wealth. "Whatever. You're mine now. Seeing you with that pathetic boyfriend, I decided to make you mine," he continued, his words treating me like an object. I felt utterly demeaned and disgusted. "I've left everything behind. I look forward to being with you from now on." I forced out a polite response as I entered the West Hill household. From that point on, everything became a blur. Emotionally drained by my father's betrayal and the loss of my beloved boyfriend, it all seemed like a whirlwind. I vaguely remember a lavish wedding with local dignitaries in attendance. The image that sticks with me is the weary expression on my father's face, who hadn't been gone long since I left home. Seeing him like that erased much of my bitterness towards him. Resigned to my fate, I resolved to change my perspective and make the most of my married life. Little did I know, it was the beginning of a living hell. I found myself shouldering all the household chores and expected to assist with the family business from morning till night. On top of that, the pressure to bear children weighed heavily on my mental state. My mother-in-law constantly criticized, haven't cleaned properly, no children yet either. My husband, initially kind, grew indifferent, showing no concern. This was far from the sweet married life I had envisioned. You're completely useless. A woman from the club would be better. Just quietly do your job and chores. Aaron's words cut deep, reducing me to a mere housemaid in my own home. Soon after, I became pregnant, enduring severe morning sickness without any sympathy. You're getting fat, just do your chores properly. I don't know why I married you, his disdainful remarks continued. I resigned myself to the reality of never being valued in this household. No matter how hard I worked, I would always be seen as nothing more than a servant due to my humble origins. It was infuriating, but for the sake of my unborn child, I endured. When I finally gave birth to a son, Matthew, Aaron, now with an heir, rarely came home. When he did, he reeked of perfume and alcohol, likely from his time spent at clubs. Ironically, I found solace in raising Matthew. He grew up healthy and was a joy to raise, despite my mother-in-law's persistent comparisons to Aaron. I was grateful Matthew did not emulate his father's behavior. Matthew had dreams of becoming a doctor, and when he left for university, I felt a profound emptiness. To fill that void, I threw myself into my work. Around that time, my father-in-law, who had treated me with respect, passed away. My mother-in-law moved to a downtown condo that he owned, inheriting his estate and enjoying her newfound freedom. With the loss of my father-in-law, who had been a source of support and care, I began to miss my own father more intensely. Taking advantage of Aaron's indifference, I reconnected with my father, finding solace in our renewed relationship. It was heartbreaking to hear my father's diagnosis of malignant lymphoma, given only 6 months to live. I couldn't accept it. No way, Dad, that can't be true. You're so lively. It's impossible that you only have half a year left. Just when we could finally be like father and daughter again. I can't bear the thought of never seeing you again. I protested desperately, but my father smiled kindly, accepting his fate with resignation. Refusing to leave him alone, I resolved to ask my husband if my father could live with us in our spacious home. I'm not ready to give up, but I don't want him to be alone, I told him. My father's happiness at hearing those words was palpable as he left with a gentle smile. For the first time since our marriage, I decided to confront Aaron. That night, as Aaron stumbled in drunk and reeking of perfume, I confronted him. He looked surprised to find me awake. What's the matter? Don't tell me you want some affection, he sneered, revealing his unchanged view of women as objects. I met his gaze and said firmly, Aaron, I have something important to discuss. My father has terminal cancer and only 6 months to live. I want him to live with us in this house. It won't be a bother to you. We can use one of the spare rooms. That's all right, isn't it? You'll agree to this request, won't you? Considering how rarely Aaron was at home, I assumed he would acquiesce. But his response stunned me. Just leave that half-dead old man alone. I'm not having someone like that in the house. It'll ruin the atmosphere. Absolutely not. If you want to do that, you can leave. I have no intention of living with a sick person. His callous words pierced me deeply. My request was coldly rejected, leaving me feeling like I had plunged into an abyss. Fine then, the shed will do, I seethed internally. Don't belittle me. Our house is spacious enough, and cleaning up a room for my father wouldn't be a problem. We can live without crossing paths. My husband's regard for me and my family is lower than that of a pet. Well then, I'll seriously clean and renovate the storage shed. If it's tidy, it can serve just like any other room. There's meaning in having my father live with us now. There's no way I'm doing that. Why should I renovate for your father? From now on, you should be with me and take proper care of me, he retorted. Remembering the extensive renovations I undertook for my mother-in-law's visits, complete with a bathroom and facilities akin to a hotel, I resolved to no longer depend on such a heartless man. From then on, I threw myself into work even more, making time to visit my father whenever possible. Some days he seemed better, others worse. Seeing my father's face became essential for feeling alive each day. My only wish was for his recovery. Then, miraculously, my prayers seemed answered when my father exceeded his prognosis of 6 months. It felt like a beacon of hope had illuminated my life, encouraging me to embrace a more positive outlook. Nearly 6 months after my father's diagnosis, my husband returned home looking visibly shaken. His early return was unprecedented since our marriage. "Sit down. I have important news. I've been diagnosed with cancer and the prognosis isn't good," he revealed. It dawned on me that his recent pallor wasn't just from alcohol or lack of sleep. Strangely, I didn't feel shocked. It felt like someone else's problem entirely. Everyone should take responsibility for their own health. "Oh, remember when you said, 'Leave that half-dead man alone'? I'll do just as you said. You also said, 'If that's what you want, then leave.' So, I'm leaving. By the way, I've already consulted a lawyer for our divorce," I declared calmly, walking away without a backward glance. It was a sudden decision, but one I didn't regret in the slightest. "You don't have a penny, do you? Where do you think you're going? Leaving this house? You won't be able to live a luxurious life like you have been. You've been living off everything I've worked hard for, you inhuman." My husband's accusations echoed behind me as I packed my essentials and prepared to leave. His words no longer held power over me. I had been conditioned by my mother-in-law and husband's verbal abuse to believe I had to stay to protect this household. But ever since my father's terminal diagnosis 6 months ago, I had awoken to the realization that I couldn't continue like this. I had mentally prepared myself for divorce and leaving this house at any moment. "I've worked so hard for you. Are you a demon, leaving me like this? Don't you have an ounce of gratitude towards me?" His shouts continued, but they no longer affected me. I never desired a life of luxury. Having 3 meals a day and a place to sleep was all I needed. Ignoring his protests, I finished packing, left the house, and sent the resignation email I had drafted to the company president without hesitation. Resolving to settle everything with my husband and the West Hill family, I took charge. I had supported him for years while he barely worked, and now it was over. I had been in touch with a divorce specialist lawyer recommended by the company's advisory lawyer since discussing my father's situation 6 months ago. I recounted nearly 3 decades of events from before our marriage to the present day. The lawyer listened quietly as I poured out my story. When I mentioned that I had been working unpaid for the family business, the lawyer was genuinely surprised. The accumulated salary owed to me amounted to hundreds of thousands of dollars. After hearing my story, the lawyer was confident. The divorce should be straightforward. I had documented emails from other women and recorded instances of his verbal abuse on my smartphone, providing ample evidence of his misconduct. As if that weren't enough, the lawyer handed me photos of my husband's infidelity at no charge. With reassurance that everything would proceed smoothly, he likened the situation to being on a large ship, urging me to remain steadfast. So I let the lawyer handle my husband's angry calls. Everything would be resolved just by passing it on to him. I walked naturally with a smile, undisturbed by the barrage of calls, including those from my mother-in-law. She was likely fretting, questioning whether I intended to abandon everything while her precious son faced troubles. If she cherished him so dearly, she should manage him herself. Her luxurious house awaited her return, resembling a showroom, perfectly suited to her taste. Yet one reason for her panic was the apparent decline of the company founded by my late father-in-law, now floundering without my support and led by a president who was more decorative than effective. The ESS implementation had exacerbated the situation. Despite her outbursts, my mother-in-law proved ineffectual in the company, unable even to handle basic tasks like making copies. While some former colleagues reached out, urging my return, I had no intention of resuming my dedication to the company. Although it held sentimental value as a local institution, client numbers were dwindling. I cherished my father-in-law and felt remorseful watching his hard-built company falter, almost as if I were to blame. Yet had my husband and mother-in-law invested as much effort as my father-in-law, perhaps this decline could have been prevented. Maybe then, I wouldn't have resigned, and Matthew might have considered taking over the family business. However, my husband not only neglected his responsibilities at the company but also engaged in inappropriate behavior, leading to multiple female employees resigning and threatening legal action for sexual harassment. Now, he was facing the consequences of his actions. As karma caught up with him, I hoped for justice to prevail, ensuring that those who had worked honestly did not suffer. As if that wasn't enough, the company faced allegations of tax evasion by the IRS. Quite by chance, while my lawyer was conducting an investigation, several irregularities in the accounts came to light. Further scrutiny revealed suspicions of my husband's involvement in embezzling funds. Reflecting on it now, it seemed odd how he managed to have so much disposable income. His salary alone didn't justify it. When I assisted with the accounting, I had been indifferent toward my husband's finances. I failed to notice the disparity between his income and expenditures. If I had questioned the source of his lavish spending, I might have uncovered the truth sooner. I vaguely justified his extravagance because I assumed he was wealthy enough to afford it. In reality, he had been misappropriating company funds, even siphoning off my own salary into his personal accounts. He engaged in kickbacks for contracts, bribes to secure deals, and made decisions that benefited himself over the company's interests. Exploiting lax oversight, committing tax evasion, and engaging in various forms of embezzlement, my husband's transgressions were manifold. Now facing the consequences, I awaited the court's judgment, hoping he would be held accountable for his actions. Whether justice would prevail before his health deteriorated remained uncertain, but I was determined that he faced the consequences of his crimes to the fullest extent possible. 6 months ago, I began auditing the books and meticulously copied them to safeguard evidence, which I promptly submitted to the IRS. My background in accounting proved invaluable in this process. To bridge the financial gap, my husband hastily sold the company to a large corporation and offloaded our sprawling mansion at a bargain price. Similarly, my mother-in-law opted to sell her condo to settle debts with both me and the IRS, downsizing to a modest apartment complex. Rumors swirled about my husband's extramarital affairs, suggesting he fathered several children for whom child support payments were now overdue. His reckless behavior, perhaps fueled by a sense of entitlement, belied a lack of foresight, despite possibly having life insurance. Meanwhile, my elderly mother-in-law, forced to work to cover her son's medical expenses, faced a stark reality of diminished social standing after years of looking down on others. With a sizable settlement, I purchased a comfortable condo in a convenient location. There, I joyously reunited with my father, and we began living together once more. Thanks to Matthew's connection to a renowned doctor, my father's health unexpectedly improved, surprising even medical professionals. Until recently, my father had been living with Matthew, contemplating hospice care or solitary living until I intervened. He had been saving a substantial sum for me, intending to repay my earlier debts. Moved by his generosity, Matthew respected my request for us to live together in his home, viewing my father with greater esteem than his own father ever garnered. It turned out that both Matthew and my father had quietly hoped for my divorce from my husband, and they were thrilled when I finally left. Their concern for me staying in a toxic marriage had been unnoticed by me until then. Before moving into my new condo, I lived with them, choosing a place close to Matthew's residence so he could visit my father regularly when I resumed work. My father eagerly bridged the generation gap with his grandchild, sharing stories of my childhood and reminiscing about my late mother, while Matthew opened up about his own background. Witnessing this bonding filled me with hope for a strong family connection. At the law firm that had supported me, I began a new chapter. Though not an accountant, my background proved beneficial in corporate cases where I assisted under the guidance of senior lawyers. I also started studying for a tax accountant qualification, believing that age was no barrier to learning. Meanwhile, my husband received a prison sentence, bringing a sense of closure and relief. Ironically, it ensured financial stability without worries about food or shelter. My mother-in-law, in contrast, moved in with relatives after her haughty demeanor crumbled. I navigated town, addressing past grievances against my husband, mother-in-law, and their troubled company. Witnessing the fallout from their abuses of power and harassment, I found solace in the fact that justice was prevailing. Returning home from work one day, I was surprised to find my father and another man waiting for me. "Welcome back, Vivian. I've brought someone who wanted to meet you," my father greeted me warmly. It was my ex-boyfriend, the person I had truly loved, recognizable even after nearly 3 decades apart. My father explained that he had apologized to him soon after I moved out, and my ex-boyfriend had patiently waited, knowing I needed to find my own path. Vivian is a hard worker. I waited a long time for this, my ex-boyfriend said with a gentle smile. Matthew, who had also been aware of my feelings, stood by silently supportive. It became clear that these three men, who cherished and understood me deeply, had been silently watching over me all along. With joy in my heart, I embraced the opportunity to live with those who mattered most. My father, Matthew, and the man who had always held a special place in my heart. What is this? I couldn't help but exclaim in shock as I read the words of a termination notice in front of me. I had been instructed not to make contact during business trips, but this was too important to ignore. I hurriedly called Jack. No answer. I called repeatedly and sent messages, but there was no response. It was past noon. Maybe he couldn't answer because of work, but I had to reach him somehow. After persistently calling, he finally picked up. Hello, Jack. Don't you know not to contact me during work hours? Jack immediately started yelling as soon as he answered. I'm sorry, but it's urgent. I've received a certified letter from the company. I told you not to contact me while I'm on a business trip. Jack was not willing to listen at all. What are you going to do if your actions ruin the contract? It seemed impossible to get him to listen. I decided to keep silent about the termination notice and not contact him anymore. My name is Sarah Johnson, and I'm 30 years old. I work from home as an industrial designer. Simply put, I design the shapes of products. I used to be an employee of a major company working from home, but now I've become independent and freelance. Thankfully, my work is going well, and I'm earning a decent income. At 26, I married Jack, whom I met through a friend's introduction. Even after our marriage, I continued working for the company. However, when I became pregnant with our son Kyle, now 2 years old, I transitioned to working from home. It allowed me to balance work and childcare effectively. Despite a slight reduction in salary compared to my office days, the convenience of working from home outweighed the costs and stresses of commuting and daycare. Our company supported this flexible arrangement, which was a relief. Yet Jack seemed uneasy about my reduced income. Shouldn't you consider going back to the office, even if it means putting Kyle in daycare? With the mortgage and the sluggish economy, every bit helps, Jack, who worked in securities and was meticulous about finances, argued. Well, the cost of daycare would offset much of what I'd earned from going back to the office, I countered. When we married, Jack and I took out a joint mortgage to buy our home. Renting is like throwing money away. It's better to stretch a bit and buy. It'll pay off in the long run, Jack often reasoned, and I agreed. We invested in an apartment near a convenience station, anticipating its appreciation. Life was peaceful until I started working from home. Then Jack's discontent surfaced. It seemed less about finances and more about fairness. If the costs are the same, maybe you should go back to the office. Staying home all day isn't good for your health or social life, he expressed. That's true, but managing childcare and work from home is physically easier for me. With no nearby family for support, it's challenging to find help, I explained. Jack's murmurs revealed deeper feelings. It doesn't seem fair that only you get to stay home. I wish I could too, he confessed. But our jobs are different. Mine, as a designer, allows remote work. Yours in sales requires office presence, I reasoned. That's true, but it still feels uneven that only you get to enjoy this nice house, he sighed. His words caught me off guard. What do you mean by enjoy alone? This is our home, yours, mine, and Kyle's. We're both paying the mortgage, so the rights should be split equally, I retorted firmly to Jack's childish remarks, feeling concerned about his role as a father. Kyle was thriving, and I was successfully juggling childcare and working from home. Encouraged by positive feedback and growing business offers, I even ventured into independence. Around that time, Jack began arriving home late and working weekends. It's a tough economy. I have to put in extra hours, or my sales will suffer, he'd sigh sarcastically. Must be nice for you, working comfortably from home, skipping the crowded commutes, he'd imply, as if belittling my efforts at home. But managing childcare and household chores while working remotely was far from lying around. I confronted him in frustration. I'm not just sitting at home, can't you see that? I contribute to our mortgage too. Oh really? Jack interrupted, his frustration evident. I guess I'm a failure then, struggling to make ends meet with my meager salary. That's not what I meant. Unlike you, with your talent as a designer, I deal with difficult clients daily just to earn a paycheck, he snapped. It felt like Jack always interpreted things negatively. Exhausted, I stopped trying to reason with him. Gradually, I questioned the purpose of our relationship. Despite Jack being Kyle's father, I felt selfish considering separation, especially for Kyle's sake. As I withdrew, Jack became more self-centered, contributing less financially. What was meant to be a joint mortgage increasingly felt like my burden alone. Managing with my designer income was tough but feasible. I suspected Jack knew this, hence his behavior. Perhaps he'd contribute if our home were at risk, knowing his calculative nature. Around that time, suspicions began creeping in. Was Jack seeing someone else and spending money on her? If that were true, drastic action would be necessary. I ensured he settled his debts. Finding proof was crucial, but I had no idea how to go about it. Hiring a detective agency seemed the most reliable but expensive option. Without specific dates, times, or places, it felt like a costly gamble with just a vague suspicion. For now, I managed, but separating from Jack would bring financial uncertainties. Saving money was a priority. Then, one uneasy day, a certified letter from the company arrived while Jack was away on a business trip. 2 nights and 3 days gone. Why send something like this when he was away? Curiosity overcame me, and I opened it, reasoning that if urgent, I needed to contact him immediately. What on earth? I exclaimed aloud. It was a termination notice. Despite being told not to disturb Jack during his trips, I couldn't ignore this. I called him repeatedly. No answer. I sent messages. Silence. It was well past noon. Maybe work kept him from answering, but I had to reach him. After persistent calling, he finally picked up. Hello, Jack. I told you not to call during my work trips. Jack snapped immediately. I'm sorry, but it's urgent. I received a certified letter from the company. Don't disrupt me on a business trip, Jack insisted. What if your actions jeopardize a contract? In the background, I heard another voice. Could it be? I discreetly pressed record. I'm serious. Stop calling. Jack's voice grew more irritated, dismissing the urgency. Okay, I relented, choosing not to disclose the termination notice. I ended the call, frustrated that Jack wouldn't listen when it mattered. It dawned on me that even if Jack lost his job, it wouldn't greatly impact me. As a skilled freelance designer, I had steadily built my career. When I first transitioned to working from home, I was an employee, reporting hours and days off to my company. Now independent, I handled not just former company projects but also new clients, fully freelance. Since going freelance, my workload and earnings had soared, several times what I made as an employee. I could part ways with Jack and thrive independently. Yet ending things like this would still be regrettable. That call, I'm certain it was a woman's voice. Listening closely to the recording, I could discern snippets of conversation. She didn't realize I was on the line and was asking Jack for something, possibly a birthday gift, indicating her birthday was nearing. This could be a pivotal clue in uncovering Jack's affair. If I can gather more clues, I might consider hiring a detective. For now, patience is key. The following evening, Jack returned from his business trip. You know I told you not to disturb me during work. I nearly lost a contract because of your calls, Jack admonished. I apologize. I wondered about the contract he mentioned. Perhaps it was related to a birthday gift for someone else. I concealed my smile as he went on. If you understand, then let's leave it at that. I'm going to take a bath and turn in. Sure. Quietly observing Jack prepare for bed, I waited until he fell asleep before discreetly checking his smartphone. As expected, it was locked. Carefully using his sleeping finger, I unlocked it and began my search. There they were, photos and videos of Jack intimately involved with the same woman, along with messages detailing their encounters, dates, and locations. He must have thought he could keep this hidden from me. How wrong he was. I transferred the evidence to my computer and returned his phone without a trace. Now, planning my next steps, I resolved to make him face the consequences. Identifying the woman from the data was my next task. Reviewing everything meticulously, I focused on the details. The following day, Jack left for work as usual, unaware of my discoveries. I revisited the certified mail, lacking clear explanations but indicating his termination was final. This posed a problem. If Jack lost his job, securing alimony and child support would be challenging. You can't squeeze blood from a stone. He likely spent money on his affair that should have gone towards our family. I needed to recover what I could, including damages from the other woman. As I sifted through the data on my computer, I found a potential lead, a contact listed as Kate in Jack's phone, presumably his mistress. Whether Kate was her real name remained uncertain, but it was a start. Compiling the information, I considered my next move. Should I hire a detective or take legal action? Contemplating my options, a dramatic idea struck me, something straight out of a TV drama. I decided to take matters into my own hands. Hey, I think I need to go back to my parents' place for a bit, I told Jack one evening. Why? He asked, eyeing me with suspicion. It's nothing serious, but my mom's come down with a bad cold and my dad can't manage everything alone. Jack considered my request, feigning contemplation, probably to maintain some semblance of control. How many days are you planning to stay? Probably 2 or 3 days, I replied, looking up at him as if seeking permission. His expression softened and a faint smile appeared. You're a good daughter. Go ahead, he said approvingly. Thank you, I responded, aiming to keep him satisfied. When are you leaving? I wanted to leave today, but it's too late now. I'll head out first thing tomorrow morning right after you leave for work. Okay, got it. Take care, Jack replied, unusually kind, likely playing into my strategy. The next morning, he left the house as usual, oblivious to his termination. I wondered where he was going, but I needed him out so I could execute my plan. With a regretful look, I saw him off and focused on my preparations. Kyle was in good hands with a reliable babysitter I trusted, someone who had cared for him before during my work and errands. I messaged Jack. I'm on the train now. Sorry for the inconvenience. Should be back in 3 days. He responded promptly. Okay, take care. That night, as anticipated, Jack brought Kate home. I had professionals gather evidence of their rendezvous. While the data from Jack's phone would suffice for divorce proceedings, I wanted a personal reckoning. On the first day of my plan, Jack and Kate returned home in the afternoon and stayed until the following evening. Then came the climax. Anxiously waiting, unsure of their return time, I was prepared for their arrival. Late that night, just before midnight, they stumbled in, clearly intoxicated, laughing and collapsing onto the bed in a tangled embrace. Now, welcome home, I said, swinging open the closet door with a resounding crash. Startled, Kate screamed and fell off the bed, hitting her head against the bedside cabinet, a fitting consequence. What the? Jack wasn't thrown off the bed, but he froze in an awkward position, lying flat on his back with his arms awkwardly extended. It seemed my sudden appearance startled him so much that he inadvertently pushed Kate off the bed, causing her to hit her head. Welcome home, dear, I greeted, my voice laced with irony. Jack remained sprawled in that peculiar pose, wide-eyed and staring at me, looking utterly ridiculous. Oh, looks like we have a visitor, I remarked dryly, stepping out from the closet and standing beside the bed, gazing down at Jack with a smirk. I ignored the unconscious woman on the floor. Why you? Who is this lady? It's quite rude to be sleeping in someone else's house like this, Jack stammered, clearly flustered. Well, that's all right, let's have a little chat, I said casually, pulling out my phone to make a call. Who are you calling? Jack asked, his voice tinged with apprehension. Oh, just someone, I replied nonchalantly, humming a tune as I ended the call and turned my attention back to Kate. What should we do with her? What do you mean, what should we? Wake her up or let her sleep? Jack retorted, his confusion apparent. I glanced between Jack and Kate, then decided, all right then, we don't want any accidents, so let's wake her up. Hey, I said, shaking Kate. She groaned and slowly opened her eyes. Hey, you, I repeated, and Kate blinked in confusion before realizing her predicament and freezing in shock. We're going to have a conversation now. Come with me, I instructed firmly. Kate remained still, seemingly unsure how to respond. Come with me, I repeated more assertively. Yes, yes, she murmured reflexively after a moment of hesitation. I led both of them to the dining room and had them sit side by side at the table. I wasn't expecting guests, but I suppose you've made yourselves at home. The table will do, I stated flatly, indicating there would be no hospitality. Now, I have some questions. If you're honest, I might consider certain things, I said, watching their expressions closely. Like what? Jack asked nervously. Perhaps minimizing the consequences you'll face, I replied, causing both of their faces to pale. So, when did this start? What? Kate blinked rapidly, while Jack's eyes darted around nervously. Since when? I reiterated, my tone unwavering. Today. Today was the first time, right? Jack interjected quickly. Yes, yes, Kate agreed, nodding hastily. Really? I pressed, studying their reactions. Yes, we just met today, Jack confirmed, with Kate nodding in agreement. Ah, that's a lie, I calmly interjected. What? Jack and Kate exclaimed in unison, their faces registering surprise and apprehension. The professionals I had summoned arrived promptly. I gestured for Jack and Kate to wait while I ushered them in. The door to the dining room opened, and two detectives, a man and a woman in business attire, entered. Please, I said, indicating for them to proceed. The woman detective withdrew an envelope while the man powered up his laptop. Here, take a look, the detective said, turning the laptop screen towards Jack and Kate. It displayed footage from the previous day, clearly showing Jack and Kate entering the room and subsequent interactions. Hey, isn't this illegal filming? Jack protested, his voice tinged with concern. That's right, it's against the law, Kate added, echoing Jack's sentiment. The detectives calmly explained the legality of their actions. While covert filming without consent is generally illegal, it is permissible in cases where it serves to gather evidence of infidelity. Moreover, their surveillance was conducted professionally under a client's request, thus falling within legal boundaries. So, this isn't a crime, I confirmed, directing the question towards both Jack and Kate. They sat in silence, heads bowed in acknowledgement. Once again, when did it start? I pressed, my tone firm. Neither of them answered immediately. Since when? You claimed it was today. But that's clearly not true, I continued, staring directly at Jack and Kate. Well, it started yesterday, Jack finally confessed, meeting my gaze with a mix of shame and resignation. I'm sorry, I lied earlier. It began yesterday. We had too much to drink and things escalated. Kate nodded in agreement, her expression apologetic. Yes, I'm sorry too. So, you admit to the affair? I asked, seeking confirmation. Yes, we're sorry. It was a mistake, Jack admitted, his voice filled with remorse. It was just this once. We're truly sorry, Kate added, tears welling up in her eyes. If that's the case, then who are these people? I questioned, placing my laptop in front of them. I displayed photos and videos extracted from Jack's smartphone, along with their social media interactions. Jack and Kate exchanged uneasy glances, realizing the evidence was irrefutable. Ah, another lie, Jack murmured. Taking data from someone's phone without permission is a crime, Kate interjected, her voice trembling slightly. Actually, it's not, I clarified calmly. As you heard, the detectives were hired to uncover the truth. It's within legal boundaries. Jack and Kate fell silent, resigned to the reality of their situation. Eventually, they began to divulge the full extent of their affair. It had started 2 years ago, shortly after Kyle was born. Jack cited feelings of neglect and loneliness following Kyle's birth as contributing factors. He admitted to seeking solace in Kate's companionship, though he expressed regret for his actions. Kate, visibly upset, corroborated the timeline of their relationship but remained silent on further details, seeming reluctant to disclose more. I'll arrange another day to talk with both your parents and Kate's parents, I informed the detectives, thanking them as they left. Turning to Kate, I gently suggested, could you leave too? Maybe stay at a hotel or something. You might catch up with Jack if you're quick. I wouldn't do such a thing, Kate replied defensively. Whatever, just leave, I insisted, not wanting to prolong the encounter. After ensuring both Jack and Kate were gone, I scheduled a meeting with our respective parents. My in-laws arrived first, visibly distraught and apologetic. My own parents joined shortly after, their faces a mask of restrained anger. I presented them with all the evidence, including transcripts from the day I caught Jack and Kate. So, I want a divorce. I'll take custody of Kyle and demand child support and damages, I stated firmly. Jack attempted to negotiate the amount, but I remained resolute. You've deceived me for 2 years and brought another woman into our home. On top of that, you've stopped contributing to our household expenses. My in-laws were stunned by these revelations, and my father-in-law even moved to strike Jack, but I intervened swiftly. I don't want to see that. If you're going to do it, please do it where I can't see. Eventually, my in-laws agreed to cover the damages and child support. As for the apartment, I opted to take payment for my share of the mortgage up until now and relinquish the rest to Jack. I don't want to live in a tainted house. Just pay me my share and then you can do whatever you want with it, I asserted, knowing that selling it immediately would only result in a loss. It was clear Jack couldn't sustain the mortgage payments alone. Later, I learned the reason behind Jack's termination from his company. He had caused significant financial losses to a client repeatedly. This further underscored the depth of his deception and irresponsibility. I thought those transactions were surefire profitable, but each one turned out badly, Jack explained, trying to justify his actions. Feeling overshadowed by my success after becoming independent and earning more, Jack resorted to unauthorized stock trades for his clients, resulting in substantial losses. Despite the consequences, he persisted, believing he could eventually recover the losses. Unaware that his company had caught on, he used his time with Kate to distract himself. That day, he had lied to his company, claiming I was ill and needing his care. Who sends a termination notice to a house with a sick person? Who's being unreasonable here? It was absurd coming from someone who fabricated an excuse to travel with another woman. His justification for the affair was equally incredulous. After Kyle was born, you stopped paying attention to me. That's expected when there's a baby. Even self-care becomes secondary, let alone tending to a grown man like a child. Frustrated by my focus on Kyle, Jack sought solace in Kate's attention. Kate was young and pretty, hanging on my every word. She made me feel valued again. Their relationship deepened after her 20th birthday. They first met when she was 19. I bought Kate everything she wanted. Her requests were endearing. "Sarah, you earn enough to buy whatever you want, so you never ask me for anything." To fund Kate's desires, he ceased contributing to our household. "The apartment was always your domain. I merely slept there, so it seemed fair for you to pay. Sarah, if you returned to the office, our time at home would be equal." That explained why he wanted me to abandon working from home. Jack's excuses were exhausting and illogical, yet he blamed me entirely. If only Sarah had continued working and supported me, none of this would have happened, he lamented. Even my father-in-law broke down in tears upon hearing these words. It was pitiful, but I couldn't dwell on it. Although their agreement to pay the damages and child support I demanded eased my financial concerns, it did little to heal my wounds or grant forgiveness. I also secured separate damages from Kate, which her responsible parents promptly covered. While I had initially threatened double damages for lies, I upheld my principles in settling the matter. "I'm sorry," Kate apologized sincerely, standing before me with her parents, a far cry from the tipsy woman I had confronted earlier. She opened up about her past. Originally from a rural area, Kate was captivated by the stark contrast of city life when she arrived. Her college peers exuded a flashy, fashionable aura that she felt compelled to emulate. To keep up with them, she took a job at a bar where she met Jack. He told me he was on the brink of divorcing his wife, pending only because of their child. I believed him. Kate appeared to genuinely care for Jack. He was charming and well off. He bought me whatever I wanted. I was happy that he listened to me. That day, Jack brought Kate to our apartment, claiming they would soon live there together once I left. He probably wanted to save on hotel expenses, but Kate took his words to heart. I thought we would build a life together here, and it made me hopeful. But then Jack dismissed me as a mere mistake, Kate said tearfully. That's when I realized I had been deceived. Her remorse was evident, and I couldn't deny that I knew Jack was married when she got involved. I was aware of his marriage, yet I still got involved. It's my fault. I'm sorry, Kate and her parents apologized sincerely. The truth remains murky. Perhaps Jack did have genuine feelings for Kate initially. However, in the end, he prioritized his own interests. His understanding of their relationship was superficial at best. He behaved selfishly, like a child seeking attention, oscillating between feeling neglected in his marriage and seeking solace elsewhere. Kate would do well to move on from such a man. Kate has since left college and returned to her rural roots with her parents to start anew. I'll work hard to repay what my parents covered as soon as possible. Despite my initial disdain for her, I now wish Kate nothing but a stable and fulfilling life. As for Jack, he was rightfully fired from his job and faced legal repercussions for the financial losses he caused. It was expected. He had lied about taking care of me and misused funds for his own pleasure, leading to his downfall. Despite receiving a suspended sentence, his future is uncertain. I feel sympathy for my in-laws who are good people, but this outcome was warranted. I've moved back in with my parents, where they help me care for Kyle while I focus on my career. Despite the personal upheaval, my professional life is thriving. Watching Kyle grow brings me solace. For now, I feel no need for a man in my life. Yet like Kate, who has embarked on a fresh start. I also hope to find someone truly trustworthy someday. I believe there's a good person out there for me. Life is too long to be defined by one setback. I want to show Kyle resilience and forward thinking, ensuring he never succumbs to the kind of dependency his father exhibited. Therefore, I will continue to look forward, hold my head high, and keep moving forward. I refuse to give up on my pursuit of happiness. Despite marrying Keith, my relationship with his mother and stepbrother Shane remained strained. However, one day, through Shane, my mother-in-law invited me to join them on a trip to Hawaii. I saw it as an opportunity to bridge the gap between us. Fate Hope accompanied me as I greeted the day. Before boarding, I entrusted my wallet to my mother-in-law. To my shock, she handed me divorce papers instead. What? Why? I stammered. It's because you can't get along with Shane and me, right? She retorted coldly. Keith has been complaining about you a lot. He's had enough, added Shane, sneering at me. With that, my mother-in-law walked away towards the boarding gate, leaving me in disbelief and anger as I stared at Shane's handwriting on the divorce papers. Enjoy your time with your real family. The fake mom can just sleep outside, I managed to say with a smile, masking my hurt. I've been patient because of Keith's family, but I'm done now. They'll regret hurting me. I'm Macy, a 50-year-old florist who also decorates event venues and wedding halls with my flower arranging skills. Divorced 10 years ago due to infidelity, I had resigned myself to a life without marriage until I met Keith, an event planner, 3 years ago. We married after a year of dating. Unlike my ex-husband, Keith is sincere and dependable, though not one for small talk or forced smiles. As someone who lost both parents, he became incredibly important to me. Despite these happy days, Shane, Keith's son from a previous marriage, remained distant. I tried my best to connect with him, but it seemed futile. As the one responsible for cooking, I made efforts to understand Shane's preferences and find common ground. I bought CDs of his favorite band and practiced their songs for karaoke. I watched the dramas he mentioned and even participated in a lottery for his favorite streaming service, gifting him the prize. Yet none of it seemed to resonate with him. Stop trying so hard to win me over, Shane's words cut through me like a knife. I'm not trying to win you over. I just want us to get along, I pleaded, hoping for a breakthrough. Shane regarded me with a deep, dismissive gaze. I'm not interested in becoming family with you. Just leave me alone. What stung even more was Shane's friendly facade around Keith. I remembered how, even before we married, Shane had been amiable during our outings, leading me to believe we could bond as a family. I understood it wouldn't be easy for an adult child to accept me as his mother, but Shane's demeanor behind closed doors was another story. Hey, old lady, could you refill the fridge? Where are my socks? His tone fluctuated, sometimes calling me names depending on his mood. When will you learn to cook like mom did? It's irritating how you act like a mom when you can't even cook, he'd mock and criticize relentlessly. Eventually, I couldn't bear it any longer. Shane, if there's something I'm lacking, please tell me. I'll do my best to improve, I implored. His response was a twisted smile. Figure it out yourself. Don't you have a brain? Maybe that's why you got cheated on, because you're so dumb. His words struck me into silence. You're just after Dad's money, aren't you? He should have picked someone younger and prettier. He jabbed at my appearance, leaving me speechless. It's still a mystery to me why Keith, someone with such charisma even in our work circle, asked me out. I thought back. One day, overhearing Shane and his friend, I learned Shane had dropped out of college and was adrift. Shane had asked me for $5,000 for a training program, and I had lent it to him. But when I brought it up later, he glared at me with disdain. Huh? Did I say that? You haven't even told Dad you dropped out of college, have you? Better come clean, he warned sharply. Shut up. Just remember what'll happen if you tell Dad. Shane's threat hung between us. I wondered if he intended to talk to Keith himself. It seemed clear that it would be better for Shane to explain directly rather than me informing Keith. After some deliberation, I decided to keep Shane's college situation from Keith. I desperately wanted to discuss Shane's cold demeanor with Keith, but he worked late almost every night, and I didn't want to add to his burdens. Since our marriage, Shane had allied with my mother-in-law, who harbored a strong dislike for me. She would frequently drop by our home, a 30-minute drive away, to critique the cleanliness and the meals, often finding fault. One evening after work, I was taken aback to find her cooking dinner in our kitchen. Glancing into the trash, I saw the ingredients I had prepared earlier tossed away. She served beef and potato stew at the dining table, facing Shane with a satisfied smile. Shane tasted the stew, his face lighting up. Grandma's beef and potato stew is the best, isn't it? She beamed. Macy, why don't you learn to cook from Grandma? Maybe then you could manage to make decent meals. It's a shame Keith and Shane have to put up with such terrible food every day. Leaving your husband and son to fend for themselves while you work isn't what a good wife does. Keith's just too kind, letting you take advantage of him. If Grandma lived closer, I'd have dinner there every night. I struggled to comprehend her audacity, throwing out my food and criticizing me while enjoying a meal. I only worked part-time, returning home early evening to manage all the housework during the week to support Keith, who was always busy. The unfairness of her criticism weighed heavily on me. My mother-in-law was visibly displeased with my decision to work. Why on earth did Keith remarry someone like you? He must have been deceived. You're just after his money, aren't you? Heath is kind and stubborn. I advised him to marry a young lady from a prestigious family suitable for a company president, but he insisted on choosing his own partner, she lamented. After more than 2 hours of criticism, my mother-in-law finally left, leaving behind only Keith's portion of dinner. I reluctantly ate with the side dishes I had on hand. Shane looked down at me with pity in his eyes and smirked. Grandma really despises you, doesn't she? It seems so. Instead of just trying to please Dad, why don't you make an effort to get along with your mother-in-law? I was astonished by his audacity after causing so much trouble. Still, I reasoned that as long as my mother-in-law lived separately, it was manageable. The real challenge lay in Shane's open hostility. That night, feeling despondent about our prospects of ever getting along, I sat quietly with Shane for dinner as Keith worked late as usual. While cleaning up afterward, Shane unexpectedly started a conversation. Hey, Grandma invited me to go to Hawaii. She suggested we all go together. I was taken aback. Ha! Are you talking to me? Yeah. Do you want to come? Yeah. She says going on trips can change how you see people. Maybe you and I could get along better. That's what Grandma thinks anyway, Shane continued, his face tinged with embarrassment. My mother-in-law chairs a group of family-run companies, so she's not retired yet. I'm happy she invited me on the trip, but more importantly, I'm glad to see her and Shane making an effort to get closer to me. So, keep the 3rd week of next month free, okay? I asked Shane. Got it. I'll take the time off. That evening, when Keith returned from work, I shared the news. His voice dropped in disappointment. I've got a business trip overseas that week. Should I decline the invitation then? No, go ahead. If I can swing by Hawaii on my way back, we might grab a meal together. That would be nice, but you've been really busy lately. Are you getting enough rest? Keith voiced his concern with a gentle smile. I'm fine, thank you. Keith knew my mother-in-law's feelings towards me weren't positive. Her inviting me on the trip was surprising. She can be stubborn with a sharp tongue, but maybe she really wants to connect with Macy. Normally, you wouldn't invite someone you dislike on a trip. With that in mind, I decided I would make an effort to bond with my mother-in-law and Shane in Hawaii. Hopefully, we could turn our strained relationship into something we could laugh about later, bridging the gap between us. The day of the Hawaii trip arrived. Shane and I accompanied Keith to the airport. After seeing Keith off on his direct flight to Los Angeles, Shane and I waited in the lobby until my mother-in-law arrived, pulling her suitcase. I thanked her for inviting me on the trip, and she smiled brightly. Hey, Macy, to avoid any trouble, how about letting me hold onto your wallet in case you lose it? Ha! I'll cover our expenses when we shop in Hawaii, so you won't need to worry about that. Here's Shane's too. All right. Shane handed his wallet to his mother-in-law, and I took out my long wallet from my bag, handing it to her as well. She opened it, nodded approvingly, and said, You've brought your credit cards and cash. Good. I'll take care of it. As she placed my wallet in her bag, I noticed a knowing glance exchanged between my mother-in-law and Shane, followed by a smirk. A sense of unease crept over me as I observed their expressions. Oh, Keith asked me to give this to you. Could you open it now? My mother-in-law handed me an envelope, leaving me baffled. As I took out the contents, a sense of suffocation gripped me. A divorce notice? Why? I managed to utter, my voice trembling. My mother-in-law grinned triumphantly. You just can't seem to get along with Shane and me. Keith has been complaining about you to me a lot. I've heard it too. He's completely fed up with you, Shane added with a sneer. I felt as though the ground was slipping away beneath me. So, you're no longer needed. Goodbye. Ignoring my plea, my mother-in-law swiftly departed, pulling her suitcase behind her. I couldn't believe it. Keith, kind and sincere, had been badmouthing me behind my back to his mother and Shane. Staring at the signature on the divorce notice, I realized with widening eyes, it was Shane's handwriting. Though similar to Keith's, the distinct quirks gave it away. Devastation turned swiftly to rage. I had been naive to trust them to strive for connection on this trip. What a fool I had been. Useless. Maybe I would never travel overseas again. With a contemptuous smirk, Shane taunted, I'm off to enjoy time with my real family. You fake mom can sleep on the streets. I returned his sneer with a cheerful nod. Sure thing. I glared at Shane until he disappeared into the crowd. Until now, I had endured and held back because they were Keith's family. No longer. They would regret trampling over my feelings. Left stranded at the airport, I refused to succumb to Shane and my mother-in-law's cruelty. Using the transit card app on my phone, I calmly took the train home. Shane relied on his bicycle for university, and my mother-in-law only used her phone for calls and messages. They must have overlooked this detail. After returning home and letting some of my anger subside, I made a phone call to someone. Following that, I spent time lounging on the sofa, contemplating the Miss Hawaii trip. I reassured myself that I could go whenever I pleased and that it wouldn't have been enjoyable with such spiteful company anyway. With these thoughts comforting me, I spent the day leisurely reading books and watching dramas online, enjoying the solitude. It struck me that this was the first time I had been alone since getting married. Even when Keith was away on business, Shane or my mother-in-law would usually be around unannounced. Despite the ruined trip, having an entire week to myself, free from Shane and my mother-in-law, felt like a luxurious vacation in itself. The next day, after finishing my chores early, I treated myself to a movie and some shopping at the mall. In the afternoon, as I relaxed with tea and watched TV at home, my phone suddenly began ringing. I had been anticipating this call around this time. Annoyed by the incessant message notifications, I reluctantly answered, only to be met with Shane's shouting. Hey, old lady, get over to Hawaii right now. What? Don't be absurd. I'm at home. Grandma took my wallet and cards. How am I supposed to get back? I have a transit app on my phone with my credit card info. Honestly, I'm managing just fine. Whatever. Just get here. What happened? I asked, sensing Shane's agitation. Clearly upset, Shane responded gruffly, I had a reservation at the hotel's 3-star restaurant, but they wouldn't let me in. Oh, really? Why not? I asked innocently, enjoying his frustration. That damn owner said, unless Miss Macy is with you, I'm afraid we can't serve you. Can you believe it? So, I missed out on the beef fillet steak. Such a shame. The view from the 36th floor is amazing, and the steak is so tender and delicious. I couldn't help but chuckle as Shane continued his rant. It was evident he was still fuming over the incident. Shane continued ranting, even if I try other restaurants in the hotel, they turn me away at the door. The staff are whispering about us in English. It's so uncomfortable. Grandma and I ended up having banana juice for dinner at a convenience store. There's a supermarket outside the hotel, right? You really know your stuff, Shane muttered suspiciously, but his frustration quickly resurfaced. Damn it. Why did I come all the way to Hawaii just to have banana juice? Grandma got so angry her blood pressure shot up, and she had to lie down. This is all your fault. I'm sorry. I apologize to avoid any further hassle. It's your fault, so you should compensate us for the hotel and meal expenses. We had a terrible experience because of you, so you should pay. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. Okay, fine. Wait, really? Yes, but first, you need to repay the $5,000 I lent you, and make sure you do it before I file for divorce. Well, even after adding the hotel and meal expenses, there will still be change left over. Shane fell silent suddenly. He must have been planning to default on his debt to me amidst the divorce chaos. Not that I had any intention of divorcing in the first place. After a brief silence, Shane spat resentfully, just give that $5,000 to your stepchild as a gift. Such a stingy woman. This is why poor people will always be poor. He had the audacity to say whatever he pleased. At this point, I was so furious I almost burst out laughing. Then, I heard my mother-in-law's voice in the background. Shane, are you talking to Macy? Yeah, Grandma. If you have something to say to her, better say it before we get divorced. We won't be seeing each other much longer. Let me talk to her. Macy, was your maiden name Smith? Her voice was tense. Yes, that's correct. I thought this question would come up sooner or later. Then are you from the Smith group? Yes, my brother is now in charge. There was a strange noise from the other end of the line. It seemed like my mother-in-law was about to faint, and Shane was panicking. Grandma, what's wrong? If you're not feeling well, you should rest, Shane urged with concern. No, I'm fine, my mother-in-law replied, trying to steady herself. So that's why we managed to get a reservation at that popular restaurant so easily, she murmured, still in shock. The Smith Group, they're the chain of restaurants popular with celebrities, right? They've got quite a reputation overseas too, Shane exclaimed. There was a pause before Shane realized, wait, she's the daughter of the Smith Group? It seems so. No one told me this. Were you keeping it a secret? My mother-in-law asked sharply. What a conniving woman, Shane started ranting again. But I stayed composed. That's odd. I'm certain I mentioned it during our pre-marriage introductions. Keith definitely knows. Oh, did I forget? I've been so forgetful lately. It's troublesome, my mother-in-law replied, half listening to the discussion about her future daughter-in-law. I did mention it. My father was the president of the Smith Group before he passed away. I inherited his wealth, so I haven't needed money. I married Keith not for his money, just to be clear. Oh, I see. Then why are you working as a florist? You could live off Keith's earnings. A wife should quit her job and devote herself to her husband and children, my mother-in-law asserted. That's your opinion, I calmly replied. In that case, I'll take back that $5,000, Shane interjected. Man, I should have asked for more from a wealthy person like you. Missed opportunity, he added, reverting to his usual snide remarks. Both my mother-in-law and Shane seemed momentarily stunned but quickly resumed their usual demeanor. The money I lent Shane needs to be repaid, I insisted. That's a separate matter, isn't it? My mother-in-law deflected. You haven't filed the divorce papers yet, have you? Shane smirked. Well then, invest $1 million in our company, my mother-in-law demanded. I was speechless. What a wife should do seemed to be pocket change to them. I couldn't do that. Even if I had the money, I couldn't give it to you. My mother-in-law's tone shifted from whining to aggressive. What's wrong with you, stingy woman? Don't you want to be useful at all? I pity Keith for marrying someone like you. She continued her tirade, making baseless threats. Fine, when Keith arrives in Hawaii tonight, I'll poison his mind against you. He'll despise you and want a divorce. I might even fabricate some stories. Dad's so naive. He'll probably believe anything if I play the victim. Shane joined in eagerly. If you won't cough up the cash, we don't need a stuck-up daughter-in-law like you. I'll just tell Keith you wrote those divorce papers yourself. He's the type to take things seriously. This is going to be fun tonight. You don't have to wait until tonight. I've been listening the whole time. Keith's voice came through the phone, startling them. Keith, you were supposed to join us after your business trip. You said you'd be working until yesterday and flying to Hawaii tonight, my mother-in-law stammered. I received a copy of the divorce papers from Macy, and it caught me off guard. I called her back immediately. I heard everything and was skeptical, so I wrapped up my work and rushed back home to hear Macy and your conversation, Keith explained calmly. Dad, you're misunderstanding, Shane tried to interject, his tone feigning sweetness. It's too late for excuses. I've been listening to the whole conversation on speakerphone. Who's really in the wrong here? Macy was the one being mistreated. How dare you? She even prepared those divorce papers out of kindness, Keith interrupted sharply. My mother-in-law retorted defiantly, well, you two are flying back tomorrow, right? I've already notified the authorities. I added, police, we haven't done anything wrong. Shane, you filled out the husband's section of the divorce papers, didn't you? That's forgery of a private document. You're getting arrested. My statement sent them into a frenzy, launching a blame game over the phone. Grandma, if I'd known we'd get arrested, I wouldn't have gone along with it. What are we going to do now? Shane panicked, turning on my mother-in-law. That's none of my concern. Shane planned and executed this whole thing, she deflected, trying to evade responsibility. To Macy? Seriously, Shane exploded, arguing with his grandmother over the phone. The conversation was far from over. Mom, you knew Shane dropped out of college and was blowing money at strip clubs. You turned a blind eye and even gave him an allowance, didn't you? Keith's voice cut through the tension. Yeah, so what? What's wrong with supporting my dear grandson? Shane backed her up defiantly. Heath's tone turned cold. As long as it's your own money, fine. But if it's company funds, that's embezzlement, a serious crime. Shane's voice trembled over the phone. That sounds bad, right? I'm just a figurehead president. My salary is low. Spare me, please. If this gets out, I might lose my chance to inherit Dad's company. That's not going to happen. I'm going independent, Keith declared firmly. Shane protested. That's not what we agreed. You promised I'd be your successor after I graduated. Who dropped out after a year? Fine, I'll enroll in a new school and study properly this time. Keep your promise and let me be your successor. Do you think I can entrust my company to a son who treats Macy so disrespectfully? Keith's words filled me with warmth. He was standing up for me. Enduring their insults all this time felt worthwhile. My mother-in-law's voice echoed through the phone, shrill and furious. Whether Shane wrestled the phone from her or she seized it herself, her rapid-fire accusations followed. Keith, this is a joke, right? Choosing that woman over your own mother and your son Shane. It's absurd. You'll regret this decision. Please reconsider. Keith's response was firm and resolute. After how you both treated Macy, this is fair. You're blinded by profit, not family, he retorted sternly. I care more about Macy, who isn't even blood related but has shown genuine care, than a family like you. There was a brief pause, then Keith hung up abruptly, blocking her number and messages. Macy, if they try to contact you, just ignore them. Okay, are you really cutting ties with them? I asked, feeling anxious. Keith nodded decisively. Yes, I've made it clear to my mother. I won't tolerate anyone disrespecting you like that. I'm sorry you had to endure it for so long. I was too caught up in work. It's okay. From now on, I'll support you in place of your mother and Shane, I reassured him. After my mother-in-law and Shane returned to Japan, they attempted to evade the police by staying in a hotel. However, Keith promptly informed the authorities of their whereabouts, leading to their swift apprehension. The forgery attempt, which I had intercepted and not submitted, resulted in a stern warning due to it being their first offense. News of their arrest spread quickly, tarnishing my mother-in-law's image in the neighborhood. Doubtless after being removed from her position for embezzlement, she retreated to her home. When relatives visited, they found her in disarray, a stark contrast to her former fashionable self. It also came to light that Shane had borrowed money from not only his mother but several relatives to fund his extravagant lifestyle. With Keith cutting ties, relatives demanded repayment immediately to prevent further deception. To ensure Shane complied, one relative offered him shelter and a job as a handyman, deducting his salary to settle his debts. Under constant surveillance, Shane found himself humbled, working alongside younger colleagues who now directed him. Meanwhile, true to his word, Keith launched his own company with trusted associates. I continued my work at the flower shop, occasionally lending my skills in venue decoration, which garnered praise and even assignments from Keith's clientele. Knowing my contributions enhanced Keith's business filled me with pride and motivation to continue supporting him with dedication. My parents suddenly appeared and began pounding on the car window. Dad, did someone ask you to do something? What's that supposed to mean? You're always so stubborn. Just be quiet and talk to Steve. The chairman prefers his father, so I'll decline unless otherwise. So they were in cahoots with my in-laws, plotting to oust Ed, my husband, from his position as the next chairman. Then, I noticed my mother holding something like a crowbar. She swung it high and crashed. The window shattered with a loud noise. I was stunned when I heard that Steve's car had fallen off a cliff and a suicide note was found. A week after the car was discovered, an envelope arrived by courier scheduled for that day. I quickly took the envelope and opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a letter and a key. Read this without my parents finding out. I knew you would, but I had to write it. This is something I wrote in advance in case something happened. If I'm there when you receive it, just laugh and give it back to me. But if I'm not, please, Hannah, take what's stored in this locker and run to my uncle's place immediately. Lucy, my sister-in-law, read it with me, and we exchanged glances. We gathered the essentials and hurried to Steve's Uncle Ronald's house to protect ourselves and my children and expose what our parents had done. My name is Hannah McKinley, 34 years old. I used to be just a typical housewife until a week ago. Now, I'm a widow with 2 children. They say my husband, Steve, took his own life. That's the most likely scenario. They told me his car went off a cliff with a suicide note on the dashboard. I can't believe it. Won't believe it because I know it's not true. He had no reason to end his life, not him. Steve and I met at our workplace, a resort hotel in a real estate chain. It was where I always dreamed of working since childhood, mesmerized by its grandeur. When my parents' friend invited us, I chose a college with a strong tourism program and worked part-time at a local hotel. Finally, I landed a job at the resort hotel I had longed for. Known for its rigorous employee training, I almost quit early on, but a senior colleague, amidst many quitting, stood by me. That person was Steve McKinley, who later became my husband after 2 years of dating. We married, but then I discovered the truth. Steve was the nephew of the chairman of the real estate group. He was destined to rise as a top executive within the group, though at that time, he was still undergoing training as a regular employee at the resort hotel. After our marriage, he transitioned from the hotel industry to real estate, frequently visiting his uncle, the chairman. Originating as a local real estate enterprise, the group underwent significant expansion post-1950s. The current chairman, now in the second generation, played a pivotal role in the company's success. His foresight during the economic bubble shielded the family from its worst impacts. Steve steadily advanced into resort development, but uncertainty loomed following the chairman's illness the previous year. With no biological heir, Steve was slated as his successor, a decision that ultimately shortened his life. I struggled to accept the news of Steve's passing when it came from the police. Soon after, my in-laws Marcus and Ivana inundated me with phone calls. "Hannah, Steve's in quite a mess now, isn't he?" "A mess indeed." Is that how they sum up their own son's situation? "Hey Hannah, it's going to be tough for you alone from now on, right? Why don't you come stay with us?" Yeah. With Steve gone, you'll face financial difficulties, won't you?" Their words grated on my nerves, and I snapped. I can't even think about the future right now. Before hanging up, I wondered, what are they even talking about? After all, I had only met these in-laws twice. Once for our engagement, and then at our wedding. They didn't even show up when our children were born. Steve had been avoiding his parents, I remembered. When I asked him about their behavior around the time of our marriage, he had bluntly stated, "They're useless, never lifting a finger for themselves." Despite holding nominal positions within McKinley Real Estate Group, Steve's parents were essentially kept at bay to prevent any interference, as Steve had explained. Unlike his capable uncle, everything they touched seemed to go awry. They're sent on pseudo-inspection trips to keep them occupied. "Surely you've accompanied them on these trips, exploring different places?" I had asked. Steve had chuckled. "No, Lucy and I were always left alone in our big house." Lucy, Steve's sister, was married to a man unconnected to the family business, residing in a distant city for his work. Harvey, Steve's brother-in-law, shared an unusual camaraderie with him, making special efforts to visit whenever he was in town. Lucy often remarked, "I envy how close those men are." Despite their strained relationship with their parents, the siblings shared a bond that seemed to work for them. Once I married and moved away, I chose not to dwell on them. Lucy remarked casually, "But Steve is deeply involved with the group, isn't he? Our parents know they're seen as failures within the company, so they resent Steve's success. Is it the same in your family?" "Absolutely," I replied. I too had a strained relationship with my parents. It seemed fine when I was younger, being their only daughter. I felt reasonably loved. However, their true nature surfaced during my college years. Drop out of college and come back home. I suddenly received that message in my early 20s, around the mid-2000s. It was because a local dignitary's son took a liking to me when he returned to town. This spoiled rich kid insisted on marrying me, and my parents tried to fulfill his wish for their own gain. "We've raised you all this time, so you should be grateful," they reasoned. My image of them crumbled. They hadn't raised me out of love but in expectation of something in return. Realizing this, I firmly refused to return home. They stopped funding my tuition and living expenses, hoping I would yield, but I didn't. It wasn't stubbornness. I sought advice from my professors and found scholarships to cover my tuition. The challenge was my living expenses. I moved into a modest apartment, sold unnecessary belongings, and juggled university, part-time jobs, and job applications. I rarely returned to my room except to sleep. Ironically, these part-time jobs led to my career and meeting Steve. Strangely, my parents were pleased about my marriage to him. Were they good parents then? Steve asked, comparing them to his own with a wry smile. No, I replied. They investigated you thoroughly, discovering you were the nephew of the real estate group's chairman. Steve struggled to accept it initially, but when they visited us after Sam and Maya were born, he realized they were no different from his own parents. Now you have 2 kids, your future is secure, my parents said, and Steve's added, absolutely, our lives will be easier too. At that moment, I noticed Steve's smile falter slightly. Both of us were sensitive to those words spat out by our parents, especially since Steve knew about my college struggles. Were they being too casual, or did they simply take us for granted? Either way, their words unmistakably revealed their intentions to depend on us and our children in the future. From then on, Steve became more cautious of them. Distant in-laws, overly eager parents. While navigating these relationships carefully, I focus on raising our children. Thankfully, Steve's current position and salary allowed us to afford a housekeeper and babysitter. Despite lacking trustworthy relatives, we managed on our own. But things took a turn last year. The chairman fell ill unexpectedly. Despite being in his 60s and known for his fitness, a head injury from his youth had developed into a hematoma, necessitating emergency surgery to relieve brain pressure. Although the operation was successful with no lasting effects, the incident unsettled the group. With no designated successor in place, the chairman had perhaps assumed he could continue indefinitely without deciding on a successor. However, illness strikes unexpectedly, prompting the urgent need to identify a successor. During his recovery, the chairman nominated Steve. This seemed a logical choice to most senior staff members, given Steve's training within the group and executive education. But not everyone accepted it. Steve's parents, please wait, Ronald. He's still young, isn't he? Shouldn't I be your closest confidant? Why choose Steve over me? They confronted the resting chairman with these arguments. In response, the chairman firmly rebuked them. Handing over the group to you would spell disaster. He then outlined his reasons for selecting Steve. This only intensified their hostility towards Steve. They demanded he step down, asserting that he should hand over control to them due to his youth. It was a thinly veiled threat. Initially couched as a request, their tone gradually shifted to one of ultimatum. Do something about this, or else. This is getting dangerous, I murmured. What do you mean? Steve asked sharply. If we let them be, they might harm us or even our kids. I always wondered if they were capable of going that far. They will, Steve asserted. I never considered them my parents, and they probably never saw us as their children. No, it's worse, Steve shook his head. They view children as tools for their own gain. It's the same with my parents. What should we do then? The word take sent a chill down my spine. I had finally found a family filled with love and trust, and I was determined to keep everyone safe. I have an idea. First, we'll ask the building manager to restrict access for suspicious individuals. Hannah, make sure to stay vigilant when you're out with the kids. Can I handle it alone? I'll arrange for my uncle to hire a security company. They'll discreetly watch over you whenever you're out. Got it, I nodded. From then on, I opted for popular spots for outings with the kids whenever possible. I actively joined gatherings with other moms, something I had hesitated about before. It's less likely for someone to try something when my children and I are with a group. But despite these precautions, an attempted abduction happened. It occurred while we were playing in the park, surrounded by other moms. Out of nowhere, a plump, middle-aged woman who appeared to be strolling snatched my daughter and fled. A vigilant security guard intervened swiftly, but the woman, surprisingly agile, managed to escape. We never discovered her identity or motive. It's a scary world out there. Let's all stay cautious, everyone remarked. We agreed to remain vigilant not only against potential kidnappings but also other dangers. However, there was one oversight on my part. Hey there. Unexpectedly, I encountered my parents in the apartment parking lot as I returned from shopping with the kids. In a panic, I hurriedly returned to the car and locked the doors. My parents began banging forcefully on the car windows. Mama, why are Grandma and Grandpa doing this? I'm scared. I cracked the window open slightly, just enough to fit my fingers through, and asked cautiously, what do you want? Ah, you finally opened up. Listen, Hannah, can you talk to Steve? It doesn't seem right for young Steve to become the next chairman. Isn't the order all wrong? A shiver ran down my spine. Could it be that these people— Dad, did someone put you up to this? What are you talking about? My father pretended ignorance. Then my mom spoke sharply. You're always so stubborn. Just be quiet and convince Steve. Tell him it's better if his own father becomes the chairman, and he should step aside. With a crowbar-like object in her hand, she swung it forcefully. There was a loud crash as the window shattered, causing the children to scream and cry in fear. Reacting swiftly, I shouted to the kids, "Get down," and began honking the horn, hoping to alert nearby security guards. Thankfully, we soon heard the footsteps of several men running towards us. "Curses," my parents muttered, quickly retreating from the scene and jumping into a nearby car to escape. "Are you all right?" the security guards asked us urgently. "I'm fine, but the kids," I started. "We're okay," my son interrupted loudly, though it was clear they had been hit by falling glass shards. "Let's go back to our apartment right away. Can you escort us to the entrance?" The guards agreed and accompanied us safely back. The building manager was shocked at our condition and promised to increase security against any future intrusions. That evening, when Steve returned, I recounted everything to him. To think it was my own parents, perhaps they were manipulated, promised a high position if they supported someone else for chairman. It's entirely possible. Why do our parents have to be like this? This is serious. I'll go to Uncle Ronald's to see if he can hide you and the kids for a while. To Uncle Ronald's? I questioned. Yes, discreetly. I'll also contact Lucy. I want her to stay with you all. But won't that be a burden on Lucy given the circumstances? It's necessary. If they're considering me for successor, they might think the same about Lucy being of the same bloodline. We need to present a united front. Steve immediately called Lucy. I can't believe it. Okay, Steve, I'll come over, Lucy responded. What about Harvey? Steve inquired. He's busy with work, but I'll talk to him. Having siblings at a time like this is invaluable, I reflected. The next day, Lucy arrived promptly. I briefed Harvey on the situation, and he expressed his intention to investigate a few matters before joining us later. Really? Harvey is reliable. Well, of course, he's the man I chose. We chuckled together at that remark. However, the day after our conversation, I received a call from the police. Steve McKinley's car was found at the bottom of a cliff. I couldn't immediately grasp the meaning of their words. What does that mean? He's been taken to the hospital. I struggled to fully comprehend the rest of the conversation. I heard the voice on the other end speaking, but I felt paralyzed. Seeing my reaction, Lucy took over the call for me. From then on, Lucy guided me to various places. We went to the police station to confirm the news and were given an envelope found in the dashboard. A suicide note. As I opened it, there was a printed letter inside. It expressed Steve's inability to bear the burden of being appointed chairman and his remorse over it. Based on this note, the police concluded that my brother had taken his own life. No, there's still an autopsy to be done. You're showing us this because you found it. He wouldn't do this to himself. I protested loudly. How could he, after warning us to be so cautious? I struggled to find more words. The police assured us they would contact us when it was time to retrieve Steve's body. The following days blurred together in my memory. The local news repeatedly mentioned that while the cause of the car's plunge was unclear, a suicide note suggested it was likely intentional. Frustrated, I turned off the TV, and my children looked at me with concern. When is Daddy coming home? My son was 8, and my daughter only 5. Both had been kept out of school and kindergarten for a while. Lucy's presence during this time was a true blessing. My mind felt clouded, everything seeming surreal. A week after Steve's car was discovered, a courier delivered an envelope scheduled for that day. Hannah, this is for you. Lucy handed it to me. Lost in my thoughts, I glanced at the sender's name, and my eyes widened. Steve. Quickly, I grabbed the envelope and opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a letter and a key. Read this discreetly. I knew you'd understand, I whispered to myself, sensing Steve's urgency in the words. This is something I prepared in case of an emergency. If I'm with you when you receive it, just laugh and return it to me. But if I'm not, I implore you, Hannah, take what's stored in this locker and seek refuge at Uncle Ronald's place immediately. Lucy and I exchanged solemn looks as we read through Steve's instructions. Swiftly gathering only the essentials, we hurried the children into Lucy's car. My own car was still in repairs from the earlier incident, leaving me uneasy about driving a loaner vehicle all the way to Ronald's estate. I entrusted Lucy with the task. "I'll handle it, but wear a hat and mask," Lucy advised with a reassuring smile. With nervous anticipation, we embarked on the journey, tense until we reached Ronald's secluded mansion in the neighboring state. Despite being reassured by the presence of security guards, I couldn't shake the fear lingering from Steve's tragedy. We had informed Ronald of our arrival beforehand, and upon reaching, we parked inside the estate and hurried to the main house. Ronald, along with his wife Olivia, awaited us at the grand entrance. "You made it, Hannah." "Lucy, Steve forewarned me to secure your safety and said you'd come here eventually, but I never expected it under these circumstances. Thank you for trusting us. We're sorry for the trouble, but we had no other choice." Gratefully, I nodded, feeling a weight lifted off my shoulders. The children gazed in wonder at their surroundings. "Don't worry, none of us anticipated this. I underestimated the severity of the situation," Ronald reassured us warmly. "I never expected they would go after Steve himself, those people." Clenching his fists in frustration, we were led into a spacious living room. It exuded a warm and peaceful atmosphere. Ronald's wife, Olivia, instructed the housekeeper, who soon brought treats for the kids to a corner of the room. "Thank you." "You're welcome. I imagine you'll want to keep a close eye on them now?" "Yes, I can't bear to let them out of my sight, but what we're about to discuss isn't something I want them to overhear. That man has always been rotten to the core. We wanted to remove him from the group, but lacked definitive evidence. Allowing him to roam freely has led to this. It's not your fault, Uncle Ronald. My parents were involved too. Steve and I, unfortunately, shared the burden of having terrible parents. If only we had taken Steve in as our adopted son sooner," Olivia murmured to herself. Suddenly, Ronald looked up. "That's it. That's a good idea. Call the lawyer, Olivia. I didn't want those kids to suffer the way Steve did." With those words, he made a proposal to me. Eventually, Steve's body, following the autopsy, was brought to Ronald's home for a private funeral and a memorial service within the group. I attended, standing alongside the children. My parents sat behind us, conspicuously part of the family. Colleagues and superiors, bewildered and saddened by Steve's sudden passing, offered their condolences during the service. Steve was truly a remarkable employee. We all had high hopes for his future in the group. "Thank you." Steve would have been deeply touched to hear that, I mechanically replied, exchanging condolences with his colleagues and my own friends who mourned his sudden loss. Everyone who knew Steve personally spoke highly of him, but his parents? After the memorial service, Ronald gathered family members, in-laws, and company executives at his home. The expansive garden and halls were bustling with people. In the midst of this, someone hurried in. It was Harvey, Lucy's husband, clutching the bag tightly as he approached. "Sorry for being late, Lucy." "Hannah, I had some things to take care of. But holding the memorial and the general meeting on the same day worked out. I managed to get everything done." Harvey grinned. "I'm returning these to you," he said, pulling out a set of documents and a memory stick from his bag. "Is everything all right now? Are these the contents from the locker indicated by the key we received the other day after rushing off in Lucy's car?" We met up with Harvey, who made copies of the documents and the memory stick. "You've given the copies to our lawyer, right?" "Yes, they're with our lawyer. We need the originals here." I nodded vigorously. During the general meeting, Ronald spoke openly about the incident, expressing his sorrow over losing Steve, the intended successor. When there was a pause in his speech, Ronald shifted to another matter. "This is indeed a tragic situation, and I believe I made an error in one regard." The chairman began. He called me and my two children forward. Understandably nervous in the midst of adults, Sam and Maya looked apprehensive, on the verge of tears. I reassured them quietly, "It's okay. Therefore, I have decided to announce the next successor right here. My new children, Sam and Mia. They are Steve's children, and I have legally adopted them both." A murmur rippled through the gathering at the mention of the children. Many of you may be surprised, but I believe this tragedy occurred because Steve remained merely a nephew, Ronald continued, directing the crowd's attention to himself and Olivia. "What are you saying, Ronald? Should this be discussed here?" "Yes, it should," he affirmed gravely, his words leaving no room for doubt. And the police haven't disclosed any details about finding a note in the dashboard, Harvey interjected, seeking Ronald's permission to speak. Go ahead. I trust you. Meanwhile, Marcus stumbled over his words. If it was found in the car, then that's just how it is, right? We haven't leaked any information to the media. Or perhaps, Marcus, you truly had no interest in what I do. Harvey retrieved his police badge from his suit pocket. He was indeed a lieutenant from the county police department where we resided. Marcus was taken aback. Had he genuinely been unaware? I was genuinely surprised. Lucy had mentioned they hadn't kept in touch much since she started working, and they only recently learned about their marriage. But wouldn't one at least take an interest in their daughter's partner's profession? That's typical of him, Lucy muttered under her breath. I can only provide critical evidence in the investigation, Harvey continued. The police have been investigating Steve's car from the beginning, noticing early on that the brakes had been tampered with. It appears this tampering occurred on the day Steve sent the letter via courier. Steve first went to place something in a locker at the station, then stopped at a convenience store to mail the letter to Hannah. It took some time, during which the brakes were tampered with. Initially, it wasn't immediately dangerous. Later, as Steve drove towards this house, he encountered a road with several winding sections. Whispers spread through the room. Yes, many can identify with that. He was being relentlessly pursued because of road rage, the driver following him deliberately, as was apparent. The roads in this area aren't always wide. Indeed, narrow roads are a common issue in rural areas, Ronald interjected gravely. His words were cryptic, but their meaning resonated with everyone present. Yes, and the police have identified the road rage driver from Steve's dashcam footage and have him in custody, Harvey said, nodding towards my in-laws. But what does this have to do with us? The road rage driver appears to have been hired. The true instigator is still under investigation. However, Marcus, you are already facing charges in a separate case. A separate case? Yes, for embezzlement you've been conducting for years. Steve had been quietly investigating this, Ronald added, gesturing towards the evidence. Suddenly, projectors around the room illuminated, displaying various incriminating documents on the walls. We are arresting you for embezzlement at the moment. The doors swung open, and police officers entered the room. Harvey glanced briefly at me, then focused on my parents. You there. My parents started to rise from their seats. You were under arrest for destroying Hannah's car. What? This is a family matter. My mother protested. I confronted her sharply. A parent who smashes a car window with a crowbar, unconcerned about the glass falling on their grandchildren. Staring at them with intensity, I spoke with all the strength I could muster. You were no parents to me at all. Stunned, my parents sank back into their seats. Subsequently, my in-laws were arrested for embezzlement and confessed during interrogation to plotting Steve's demise, further complicating their legal troubles. My parents faced charges of property damage and aiding my in-laws' criminal activities. The case initially made local headlines, featuring prominently in regional newspapers and news broadcasts. However, its sensational nature and involvement of actual parents ensured it became national news, captivating talk shows and social media. In today's digital age, their reputations were irreparably tarnished, their names forever associated with stigma online. Even if they were eventually released, their future prospects seemed grim. But that was no longer my concern. Since then, we have been living in Ronald's house where we have our own rooms. Olivia doted on Sam and Mia, perhaps overly so, having always yearned for children but unable to conceive. For now, I believed it was beneficial. Sam and Mia, having recently lost their father, underwent changes in schools and kindergarten. I regretted involving them in adult conflicts, but for their safety it seemed the best course. Meanwhile, Ronald remained committed to maintaining his health, ensuring he could support Sam and Maya until they reached adulthood, focusing on his physical well-being daily. Tea is ready, everyone. I spent my days here, caring for my children and being a support to Ronald and Olivia. I didn't know how much of a difference I made to them, but for the children's sake, I intended to live life to the fullest.